Craig Ross, a 65-year-old retired human engineer, steps off his shuttle onto the harsh, alien soil of Kyoness, instantly finding himself at the center of a heated Klingon confrontation and catching the eye of two stunning Klingon women. The landing pad erupts in chaos as two factions of Klingon clash. One group, advocating for increased human presence, squares off against their vehemently opposed counterparts. Leading the pro-human faction, Zoe, a strikingly beautiful Klingon female with unique purple-tinted skin, locks eyes with Craig. The anti-human group surges forward, attempting to physically block Craig's disembarkation. Zoe springs into action, her impressive strength and combat skills on full display as she carves a path through the crowd. Craig watches in awe as she effortlessly tosses aside opponents twice her size. As Craig takes his first steps onto Klingon soil, the alien environment assaults his senses. The intense gravity pulls at his bones, making each step a conscious effort. The thick atmosphere feels heavy in his lungs and unfamiliar scents fill his nostrils, a mix of metallic undertones and earthy aromas unlike anything on Earth. A Klingon official pushes through the crowd, flanked by a small, welcoming committee. The planetary government, eager to attract wealthy human retirees like Craig to boost their struggling economy, has dispatched this group to ensure a smooth arrival. Among them stands Lursa, another attractive Klingon female, who immediately fixes her gaze on Craig with unmistakable interest. Before introductions can be made, the anti-human faction regroups and launches a surprise attack. Craig finds himself caught in the middle of a Klingon brawl, disoriented by the speed and ferocity of the combat. Zoe and Lursa flank him, their bodies forming a protective barrier. "This way, human!" Zoe shouts, grabbing Craig's arm and pulling him towards the outskirts of the landing pad. Lursa follows close behind, her eyes constantly scanning for threats. As they flee, weaving through the labyrinthine streets of the Klingon city, Craig learns that Zoe and Lursa are sisters from a prominent Klingon family. Both remain unmarried due to their controversial pro-human stance, a fact that seems to cause them both pride and frustration. The trio ducks into a shadowy alleyway, catching their breath. The sounds of pursuit fade into the distance, replaced by the general bustle of Klingon city life. Craig realizes his retirement plans have taken an unexpected turn, complicated by political unrest, potential danger, and the sudden attention of two alluring Klingon women. News of Craig's arrival spreads through the city like wildfire. Klingons stop and stare as the human passes, some with curiosity, others with open hostility. Craig feels the weight of their gazes, understanding that his presence here is far from ordinary. A public announcement echoes through the streets. The Klingon government, seeing an opportunity to showcase successful human integration, proposes an unorthodox solution. Craig should marry both Zoe and Lursa in a public ceremony, demonstrating the possibility of human-Klingon unity. Craig's mind reels at the proposal. He looks at Zoe and Lursa, their alien features both foreign and captivating. The sisters exchange a glance, a mix of surprise and consideration in their eyes. In that moment, Craig realizes his retirement has become far more than he bargained for, a crucible of cultural clashes, personal dilemmas, and the potential for both interspecies conflict and cooperation. As the implications of the government's proposal sink in, Craig finds himself at a crossroads. His choices now will not only shape his own future, but potentially the relationship between humans and Klingon for generations to come. The harsh Klingon sun beats down on him as he contemplates the path ahead, aware that his retirement has suddenly become the most important diplomatic mission of his life. The Klingon sun dipped below the jagged skyline as Craig contemplated the gravity of his situation. His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden commotion erupting in the streets below. Shouts and the clash of metal echoed through the air, growing louder by the second. "It's starting," Zoe growled, her purple-tinted skin gleaming in the fading light. "The anti-human faction isn't taking the news well." Lursa moved to the window, her keen eyes scanning the gathering crowd. Koth's followers. They're attacking human establishments. Craig joined her, his stomach churning at the sight of Klingon extremists smashing windows and overturning vehicles. The planetary security forces seemed overwhelmed, barely containing the violence as it spread like wildfire through the city. "We need to move," Zoe declared, grabbing Craig's arm. "The High Council will want to address this immediately." As they hurried through the winding streets, Craig's engineered lungs struggled to process the thick Klingon atmosphere. Each step felt like wading through molasses, the planet's intense gravity a constant reminder of his alien status. Their progress was halted by a crackling public announcement. Chancellor Martok's gruff voice boomed from speakers throughout the city, summoning Craig, Zoe, and Lursa to an emergency meeting of the High Council. "Perfect timing," Lursa muttered, ushering them towards a waiting transport. The sleek vehicle rose above the chaos, giving Craig a bird's-eye view of the unrest below. Fires dotted the landscape, plumes of smoke rising into the amber sky. The sight filled him with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Suddenly, a violent jolt rocked the transport. Alarms blared as the craft lurched to one side. "We're under attack," the pilot shouted, wrestling with the controls. Through the view screen, Craig saw a group of Klingon warriors on personal flyers, led by a particularly fierce-looking individual. "That's Koth," Zoe snarled, recognizing the leader of the anti-human faction. The transport dove and weaved, narrowly avoiding energy blasts from the attackers. Craig's engineering mind raced, analyzing the situation. "The propulsion system," he shouted over the chaos. "If we can reroute power from the auxiliary thrusters, we might be able to outmaneuver them." Lursa nodded, her fingers flying over the control panel. The transport surged forward, but Koth's group remained in hot pursuit. "We need a weapon," Zoe growled, her warrior instincts kicking in. Craig's eyes darted around the cabin, taking in every component. An idea struck him. "The communication array," he said, already moving to dismantle the panel. "If I can reconfigure it to emit a focused electromagnetic pulse." Working swiftly, Craig repurposed the array, his decades of engineering experience guiding his hands. Zoe and Lursa watched in fascination as he transformed the benign equipment into an improvised weapon. "Now!" Craig shouted, activating the device. A wave of energy pulsed from the transport, disrupting the systems of the pursuing flyers. Koth and his followers fell back, their vehicles temporarily disabled. Zoe's eyes gleamed with admiration. "Impressive human," she purred, a new respect evident in her voice. They landed at the High Council chambers, the imposing structure looming before them. Inside, they were led to a vast hall where Chancellor Martok awaited, his battle-scarred visage a testament to a lifetime of conflict. "So, you are the human causing such a stir on our world," Martok rumbled, his one good eye fixed on Craig. Craig stood tall, despite the crushing gravity. "I came here for a peaceful retirement, Chancellor. I had no intention of sparking a civil conflict." Martok's laugh was like rolling thunder. "Intention matters little in the face of reality, human. But perhaps we can turn this chaos to our advantage." The Chancellor outlined his proposal, a series of trials to prove Craig's worth to the Empire. If successful, he would earn the right to marry Zoe and Lursa, potentially ushering in a new era of human-Klingon relations. "Your first challenge begins now," Martok declared, gesturing to a young Klingon warrior who stepped forward, muscles rippling beneath his armor. Craig's heart raced as he faced his opponent. The Klingon charged, but Craig's lower gravity upbringing gave him an unexpected edge. He dodged the attack with surprising agility, using the Klingon's momentum against him. The battle raged on, Craig's human physiology adapting to the harsh Klingon environment in ways he never anticipated. His opponent's strength was fearsome, but Craig's endurance proved greater. Finally, the young Klingon warrior collapsed from exhaustion, unable to continue. A murmur of surprise rippled through the gathered Klingon. Zoe and Lursa exchanged looks of pride and growing attraction. Martok nodded approvingly. You have passed the first trial, human. Rest now, for tomorrow you face an even greater challenge. As Craig was led away to prepare for his next test, he caught sight of Koth watching from the shadows, hatred burning in his eyes. The human retiree realized that his trials were just beginning, and the true test of his worth to the Klingon Empire lay ahead. The sun rose on Craig's second day of trials, casting an eerie red glow across the Klingon landscape. Chancellor Martok's voice boomed through the High Council chambers, announcing the next phase of Craig's test. Human, you have proven your physical prowess. Now, you must face the fires of Jarthor, a sacred and treacherous realm that will push you to your limits. Craig nodded, his muscles still aching from the previous day's battle. Zoe and Lursa flanked him, their presence both reassuring and intimidating. We will accompany you, Zoe declared, her purple-tinted skin shimmering in the low light. Lursa nodded in agreement. This trial is as much ours as it is yours, human. The trio set out, leaving the relative safety of the city behind. As they ventured into the wild Klingon terrain, the landscape grew increasingly hostile. Jagged rocks jutted from the ground, and the air grew thick with sulphurous fumes. Craig's lungs burned with each breath, his body struggling to adapt to the alien atmosphere. He stumbled, caught off guard by a sudden shift in the ground beneath his feet. Zoe's strong hand gripped his arm, steadying him. Watch your step, human. The fires of Jarthor are treacherous. As if to emphasize her point, a jet of scalding steam erupted from a nearby fissure. Craig recoiled, his skin prickling from the intense heat. We need a way to predict these eruptions, Lursa growled, her eyes scanning the hazardous terrain. Craig's mind raced, years of engineering experience kicking into high gear. He pulled out his tricorder, fingers flying over the controls. If I can recalibrate this to detect thermal anomalies. Zoe and Lursa watched in fascination as Craig modified the device. Within minutes, he had created a rudimentary early warning system for the steam vents. Impressive, Lursa admitted, a hint of admiration in her voice. They pressed on, Craig's modified tricorder guiding them through the perilous landscape. The ground grew increasingly unstable, forcing them to move with caution. Suddenly, they found themselves at the edge of a massive chasm. Molten lava bubbled far below, the heat so intense it distorted the air around them. How are we supposed to cross this? Zoe snarled, frustration evident in her voice. Craig surveyed the area, his mind working overtime. We build a bridge, he announced, pointing to the abundance of volcanic rock surrounding them. Lursa scoffed. With what tools, human? With our hands, Craig replied, already moving to gather suitable stones. Despite their initial skepticism, Zoe and Lursa joined in the effort. Hours passed as they labored under the harsh Klingon sun, slowly but surely constructing a makeshift bridge across the chasm. As Craig placed a final stone, a familiar voice cut through the air. Stop right there, human. Koth emerged from behind a rocky outcropping, flanked by his extremist followers. Energy weapons hummed to life, their eerie glow casting long shadows across the volcanic landscape. Those weapons are forbidden here, Lursa shouted, her hand instinctively reaching for her own disruptor. Craig's eyes widened as he recognized the advanced weaponry. In a flash of inspiration, he activated his tricorder, capturing evidence of Koth's transgression. The air erupted with weapons fire as Koth's followers attacked. Zoe and Lursa sprang into action, their bodies moving with fluid grace as they engaged the enemy. Craig ducked behind a boulder, his mind racing. He needed to complete the bridge while somehow surviving the onslaught. Peering out from his cover, he saw an opening and dashed forward, dodging energy blasts as he laid the final stones. Just as the situation seemed hopeless, A battle cry echoed across the chasm. Chancellor Martok's elite guard, led by the fierce warrior Karg, charged into the fray. The tide of battle turned, Koth's followers scattering under the onslaught of Klingon warriors. As the dust settled, Craig emerged from his shelter, tricorder in hand. "Karg," he called out, approaching the battle-hardened Klingon. "I have evidence of Koth's dishonor." He brought forbidden weapons into the fires of Giarthor. Karg's eyes narrowed as he examined the tricorder's readings. A grim smile spread across his face. "You have done well, human. This evidence will be most useful." With Koth's immediate threat neutralized, the group turned their attention back to the trial at hand. Craig led the way across his improvised bridge, each step a testament to human ingenuity. Suddenly, the ground shook violently. Craig's creation began to crumble, chunks of rock plummeting into the molten abyss below. Acting on pure instinct, Craig shoved Zoe and Lursa to safety, finding himself stranded on the wrong side of the rapidly widening gap. "Craig!" Zoe shouted, her voice tinged with an emotion that surprised even her. Lursa reached out, her fingers grasping at empty air. "Jump, human." Craig looked down at the bubbling lava, then back at the Klingon sisters. Their faces, alien yet somehow familiar, were etched with concern. In that moment, he realized that his feelings for them had grown beyond mere physical attraction. Taking a deep breath, Craig spotted a narrow ledge running along the chasm wall. It was his only chance. With careful, measured steps, he began his perilous journey across the gap. The heat was oppressive, each breath a struggle against the toxic fumes. Craig's vision swam, his human physiology pushed to its absolute limits. He could hear Zoe and Lursa calling out to him, their voices seeming to come from far away. As he neared the end of the ledge, disaster struck. The rock beneath his feet gave way, sending Craig tumbling towards a fiery depth below. Time seemed to slow as he reached out, grasping for any hold. Suddenly, strong hands gripped his arms. Zoe and Lursa, acting in perfect unison, hauled Craig to safety. As they collapsed together on solid ground, the physical contact sent a jolt through all three of them. Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. Karg approached, his expression a mix of respect and amusement. "You continue to surprise us, human. Come, the shrine of Kahlus awaits. Your final test begins now." As they set off towards the ancient site, news of Craig's exploits spread like wildfire across Kyoness. The human retiree had become a symbol of honor and ingenuity, challenging long-held beliefs about his species. Meanwhile, in a dark corner of the Klingon capital, Koth nursed his wounded pride. His communicator crackled to life, a distorted voice emerging from the static. "The albino is listening, Koth. Speak your piece." Koth's eyes gleamed with malice. "I have a proposition for you, one that will rid us of this human pest once and for all." All. Koth's eyes gleamed with malice as he contemplated the albino's potential assistance in his vendetta against Craig and the Human Integration Initiative. Unaware of the sinister plot brewing in the shadows, Craig and his Klingon companions made their way back to the city. As they approached the outskirts, Craig suddenly stumbled, his breath coming in short, ragged gasps. "Craig!" Zoe's voice was tinged with concern as she steadied him. "I'm fine," Craig wheezed, but his pale complexion and trembling limbs told a different story. Lursa frowned, her warrior's instincts sensing the gravity of the situation. "You are not fine, human. Your body struggles against our world." Craig tried to take a deep breath, but the dense Klingon atmosphere seemed to resist his efforts. His vision swam, the increased gravity pulling at his limbs with merciless force. He had pushed himself to the limit during the trials, and now his earthborn physiology was rebelling against the alien environment. "We must get him to a medical facility," Zoe declared, her tone brooking no argument. They half-carried Craig through the streets of the Klingon capital, drawing curious and sometimes hostile glances from passers-by. The human's weakness was on full display, fueling the arguments of those who opposed the integration program. At the medical center, they were greeted by Dr. Tar, a female Klingon with piercing eyes and an air of no-nonsense efficiency. She quickly ushered Craig into an examination room, her practiced hands moving over various alien instruments. "His system is in shock," Dr. Tar announced after a thorough examination. "The human body was not designed for our world. He requires time and treatment to adapt." Zoe and Lursa exchanged worried glances. "How long?" Lursa asked, her voice uncharacteristically soft. Dr. Tar's lips pressed into a thin line. "Days, perhaps weeks. I can accelerate the process with a regimen of Klingon herbs and minerals, but his body must do the bulk of the work." Craig, lying on the examination table, felt a wave of despair wash over him. He had come so far, overcome so many challenges, only to be betrayed by his own biology. "The final trial," he croaked. I can't fail now." Zoe placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch unexpectedly gentle. "Rest, Craig. We will find a way." As Craig began his treatment under Dr. Tar's supervision, news of his condition spread rapidly through the Klingon capital. Chancellor Martok found himself besieged by angry council members demanding an immediate end to the human integration program. "This human's weakness proves the folly of your initiative," one counselor bellowed, his fist pounding on the ancient stone table. Martok's single eye blazed with barely held back fury. "You would judge an entire species based on one individual's struggle? Have you forgotten the honor and ingenuity this human has displayed?" The chamber erupted into chaos, voices raised in heated debate. Martok, sensing the tide turning against him, made a bold decision. "The final trial will proceed as planned," he declared, silencing the room. "But it will be modified to showcase not just physical prowess, but the full range of human capabilities." Murmurs of discontent rippled through the assembly, but none dared to openly challenge the Chancellor's decree. Meanwhile, in the medical facility, Craig found himself immersed in a crash course on Klingon medicine. Dr. Tar, impressed by his quick mind and genuine curiosity, shared insights into their holistic approach to health. "Our bodies are forged in battle," she explained, mixing a pungent concoction of herbs. "Our remedies must be equally strong to be worthy of a warrior." Craig nodded, his engineer's mind drawing parallels between Klingon medical practices and the complex systems he had worked with throughout his career. As the days passed, he felt his body slowly adapting to the harsh Klingon environment, but time was running short. Zoe and Lursa were constant presences at his side, their initial wariness replaced by a growing admiration and affection. They shared stories of Klingon history and legend, painting vivid pictures of a culture steeped in honor and tradition. "Kalas the Unforgettable," Lursa recounted, her eyes shining with pride, "forged the first bat from a lock of his hair, dipped in the lava of Kree-stacked volcano." Craig listened intently, his mind whirring with connections between Klingon myth and scientific principles. The heat of the lava would have altered the molecular structure of the hair, he mused, combined with rapid cooling. It's not unlike the process of forging high-strength alloys. Zoe and Lursa exchanged surprised glances, impressed by Craig's ability to bridge their two worlds. As Craig's recovery progressed, Dr. Tar made a breakthrough. Combining Klingon herbs with techniques gleaned from human medical databases, she developed a treatment that accelerated Craig's adaptation to QNOS. "This hybrid approach," she announced, her voice tinged with excitement, "it shows promise beyond your case, Craig. It could revolutionize our treatment of various Klingon ailments." News of this medical advancement spread quickly, swaying public opinion further in favor of human-Klingon cooperation. But not everyone welcomed this change. In a shadowy corner of the city, Koth met with the newly arrived albino, their voices low and filled with malice. "The human grows stronger," Koth snarled. "We must act soon." The albino's pale eyes glittered with cruel intelligence. "Patience, Koth. The Shrine of Kalas will provide the perfect opportunity to eliminate both the human and Martok. Our forces are in place." As the day of the final trial approached, Craig threw himself into preparation, working closely with Zoe and Lursa to understand the intricacies of Klingon culture and the legend of Kalas. His unique perspective, blending engineering principles with Klingon lore, began to attract attention from Klingon scholars. The atmosphere on Kionoas grew increasingly tense, with supporters and opponents of human integration gathering near the Shrine of Kalas. Chancellor Martok increased security measures, unaware of the albino's infiltration and the looming threat. On the morning of the trial, Craig stood before the mirror in his quarters, adjusting the Klingon armor that had been provided for him. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of expectation pressing down on him. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Zoe and Lursa entered, their eyes widening slightly at the sight of Craig in full Klingon regalia. "It is time," Zoe said softly, her hand resting on the hilt of her bat'leth. Craig nodded, his heart made. As they made their way to the shrine, he was acutely aware of the eyes upon them, the whispers and speculative glances that followed their every move. The sacred grounds of the shrine loomed before them, ancient stones etched with the history of the Klingon people. Craig stepped forward, ready to face whatever challenge awaited him, unaware of the deadly trap that had been laid in his path. As he crossed the threshold of the shrine, the air thick with anticipation, Craig couldn't shake the feeling that this trial would test far more than his physical abilities or engineering acumen. The very future of human-Klingon relations hung in the balance, and the stakes had never been higher. Higher. As Craig stepped into the hallowed grounds of the shrine, the air crackled with anticipation. The assembled Klingon, a sea of ridged foreheads and stern expressions, watched his every move with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Chancellor Martok stood at the center of the shrine, his single eye gleaming with pride as Craig approached. "Welcome, Craig of Earth," he boomed, his voice echoing off the ancient stones. "Are you prepared to face the final trial?" Craig nodded, his heart racing beneath the unfamiliar weight of Klingon armor. "I am, Chancellor." As Craig took his place before the crowd, he caught sight of Zoe and Lursa standing nearby, their faces a mixture of concern and encouragement. He drew strength from their presence, straightening his back and lifting his chin. "Begin," Martok commanded. Taking a deep breath, Craig launched into a recitation of Kalas teachings, his voice steady and clear. "Honor is more than glory in battle," he intoned, the ancient words flowing from his lips with surprising ease. "It is found in the heart of a warrior who stands for what is right, even when standing alone." As he spoke, a hush fell over the crowd. Even those who had opposed his presence on Kionoas found themselves nodding in agreement, caught off guard by the humans' deep understanding of their most revered figure. Koth, watching from the shadows, felt his anger growing with each word. He glanced at his communicator, waiting for the signal that would unleash chaos. Halfway through Craig's recitation, the air was split by a deafening explosion. The ground shook violently, sending Klingons stumbling and screaming. Before anyone could react, more blasts rocked the shrine, filling the air with dust and debris. In the ensuing pandemonium, figures in maintenance uniforms suddenly produced weapons, their true identities revealed as the albino's mercenaries. They surged forward, targeting Craig and Chancellor Martok with deadly precision. Zoe and Lursa sprang into action, their bat'leths flashing in the dim light as they cut down the first wave of attackers. "Craig," Zoe shouted over the din of battle. "Get to cover." But Craig's mind was already racing, his engineers taking in the damage to the shrine structure. He spotted a group of Klingon trapped beneath a partially collapsed archway and rushed to their aid. "This way," he called out, guiding them to safety as he assessed the failing supports. "We need to shore up that central column, or the whole place will come down." As Craig worked to stabilize the shrine, improvising with fallen debris and Klingon technology, the battle raged around him. Chancellor Martok found himself locked in fierce combat with Koth, their batleths clashing in a deadly dance. "Traitor," Martok roared, parrying a vicious blow from his former ally. "You would destroy our most sacred site for your petty revenge?" Koth snarled, his eyes blazing with hatred. "I would burn all of QS to rid us of this human filth." Their duel carried them across the shrine, narrowly avoiding falling stonework and clusters of terrified onlookers. Craig, seeing the Chancellor in danger, redoubled his efforts to secure the shrine structure. Amidst the chaos, the albino emerged from the shadows, his pale skin standing out starkly against the darkness. He raised the disruptor, taking careful aim at Craig's unprotected back. Zoe, having just dispatched another mercenary, caught sight of the weapon. Without hesitation, she threw herself into the line of fire. "Craig!" she screamed, a split second before the disruptor blast struck her squarely in the chest. Time seemed to slow as Craig turned. Horror etched on his face as he watched Zoe crumple to the ground. Lursa let out a primal roar of rage, launching herself at the albino with murderous intent. Craig rushed to Zoe's side, his mind racing through everything he had learned from Dr. Tar. He quickly assessed her injuries, noting the severity of the disruptor burn with growing alarm. "Stay with me, Zoe," he muttered, fumbling for the emergency medkit he had insisted on carrying. He began applying a mixture of Klingon herbs and human synthetic coagulants to the wound, his hands steady despite the chaos surrounding them. As Craig worked to save Zoe's life, the tide of battle began to turn. Klingon security forces poured into the shrine, their arrival announced by the thunderous war cries of fresh warriors joining the fray. The albino, locked in brutal hand-to-hand combat with Lursa, realized his plan had failed. With a snarl of frustration, he activated a personal transporter, disappearing in a shimmer of energy just as Lursa's batleth whistled through the space where his head had been. Koth, seeing his allies fall or flee, redoubled his assault on Martok. But the Chancellor, despite his age, proved to be the superior warrior. With a roar of triumph, Martok disarmed Koth, sending his batleth clattering across the stone floor. As the last of the mercenaries were subdued or driven off, an eerie quiet fell over the shrine. The air was thick with dust and the metallic scent of blood, both human and Klingon. Chancellor Martok, breathing heavily from his exertions, surveyed the scene with a mixture of anger and sorrow. His eyes fell on Craig, still kneeling beside Zoe's prone form, his hands covered in her blood as he fought to save her life. "Get a medical team here now," Martok bellowed, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. As Klingon medics rushed to assist, Craig found himself gently but firmly moved aside. He stood on shaky legs, his pupils dilating from the events of the past few minutes. Lursa appeared at his side, her face a mask of concern as she watched her sister being treated. "Your actions today," Martok said, approaching Craig with a newfound respect in his eyes, "have proven your worth beyond any doubt. You have faced our greatest trial battle and emerged victorious." Craig nodded numbly, his gaze fixed on Zoe as she was carefully lifted onto a stretcher. "Thank you, Chancellor," he said, his voice hoarse. "But I fear the cost may have been too high." Martok placed a hand on Craig's shoulder, the gesture surprisingly gentle for a Klingon. "The day is not yet over, my friend. Come, we have much to discuss, and a wounded warrior to attend to." As they made their way out of the battered shrine, Craig couldn't help but feel that this was only the beginning of a new and even more challenging chapter in his Klingon adventure. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with political implications and personal complications. But as he walked beside Lursa, following Zoe's stretcher, Craig knew one thing for certain. His life on Kiz would never be the same. Craig's life on Kunis took an unexpected turn in the days following the attack on the Shrine of Kalas. As he sat beside Zoe's bed in the Klingon medical facility, her chest rising and falling steadily beneath the regenerative field, he found himself thrust into the center of a political maelstrom. "You have become quite the celebrity, Craig of Earth," Lursa said, entering the room with a data pad in hand. She handed it to him, her fingers brushing his for a moment longer than necessary. Craig scrolled through the Klingon news feeds, his eyes widening at the sight of his own face plastered across every headline. "This is unexpected," he murmured, taking in the articles detailing his actions during the attack and speculating about his role in Klingon society. Lursa nodded, her eyes gleaming with a mix of pride and something else Craig couldn't quite identify. "Chancellor Martok requests your presence at the High Council chambers. There is much to discuss." As they made their way through the winding corridors of the medical facility, Craig couldn't help but notice the way other Klingon regarded him. Some nodded respectfully, while others eyed him with suspicion or outright hostility. The High Council chambers buzzed with tension as Craig entered alongside Lursa. Chancellor Martok stood at the center, his imposing figure commanding attention from the assembled council members. "Craig of Earth," Martok boomed, "your actions at the shrine have proven your worth to the Empire. But now we face a new challenge. The attack has stirred up old prejudices and fears. We must act decisively to secure the future of human-Klingon relations." Craig listened intently as Martok outlined his bold proposal: the establishment of a human embassy on Koes, with Craig himself as the first ambassador. The council erupted into a cacophony of shouts and arguments, the conservative faction voicing their vehement opposition. "This is madness," roared Councillor Kravik, a towering Klingon with a scar running from his left eye to his jaw. "We cannot allow a human to hold such a position of influence. He must prove his worth through combat, as our traditions demand." Martok silenced the council with a thunderous slam of his fist. "Craig has already proven himself in battle, but if further trials are required, so be it. He will face whatever challenges you set before him." Craig felt a mix of grit and apprehension wash over him. He caught Lursa's eye, and she gave him a subtle nod of encouragement. As the days passed, Craig found himself pulled in multiple directions. He divided his time between visiting Zoe as she recovered, assisting Martok with diplomatic efforts, and preparing for the challenges that lay ahead. Lursa became his constant companion, guiding him through the intricacies of Klingon politics and culture. Their growing closeness did not go unnoticed, sparking gossip and speculation throughout the Empire. One evening, as they walked through the gardens of the Chancellor's residence, Lursa turned to Craig with an intensity that made his heart race. "Craig," she said, her voice low, "I must speak with you about something important." Before she could continue, they were interrupted by the arrival of Admiral Elizabeth Taylor and her Federation diplomatic team. The Admiral, a tall woman with steel-gray hair and piercing blue eyes, regarded Craig with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Mr. Ferguson," she said, her tone clipped and professional, "I trust you understand the delicate nature of your position here. The Federation has a vested interest in ensuring that your actions align with our broader goals in the quadrant." Craig felt the weight of competing loyalties pressing down on him. "Of course, Admiral. I'm doing my best to navigate the situation in a way that benefits both Earth and Konoes." As they discussed the intricacies of his potential role as ambassador, Craig couldn't help but notice the way Lursa bristled at Taylor's presence. The tension between the two women was palpable, adding yet another layer of complexity to an already fraught situation. Their meeting was cut short by the sound of distant explosions. Alarms blared throughout the city, and Craig's communicator chirped urgently. "Craig," Martok's voice crackled through the device. "The albino has struck again. A major power facility has been attacked. We need your expertise immediately." As Craig rushed to respond to the crisis, He felt the eyes of both Lursa and Admiral Taylor upon him. He knew that every action he took from this moment forward would be scrutinized not just by the Klingon, but by the Federation as well. The power facility was in chaos when Craig arrived. Klingon engineers struggled to contain the damage, while security forces searched for any remaining saboteurs. Craig immediately set to work, his mind racing as he assessed the situation. "We need to reroute power through the secondary grid," he shouted to a nearby Klingon technician, "and boost the output from the auxiliary reactors to compensate for the loss." As Craig worked alongside the Klingon crew, he couldn't help but feel a sense of exhilaration. Here, in the midst of crisis, he found a common language with these warriors, the language of problem-solving and ingenuity. Hours passed in a blur of calculations, improvised repairs, and tense moments as they fought to restore power to the city. Finally, with a triumphant roar from the Klingon workers, the facility hummed back to life. Exhausted but victorious, Craig emerged from the facility to find a crowd of Klingon waiting. To his surprise, they erupted in cheers, chanting his name in a way that sent chills down his spine. As the adrenaline of the crisis faded, Craig realized that this was just the beginning. The albino was still out there, planning his next move. The traditionalists, led by Kravik, would soon issue their challenges. And somewhere in the heart of the Empire, Zoe was recovering, her presence a constant reminder of the personal stakes in this interstellar drama. Craig looked out over the Klingon capital, its lights now shining brightly once more. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the trials to come. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and political intrigue. But as he felt Lursa's hand on his shoulder and saw the respect in the eyes of the Klingon around him, Craig knew one thing for certain. His adventure on Kis was far from finished. As Craig gazed out over the glittering cityscape, he felt a surge of grit. The challenges he'd faced so far were just the beginning. In the days that followed, Craig found himself at the center of an unprecedented proposal from the Klingon High Council. Chancellor Martok, impressed by Craig's actions during the recent crises, proposed a bold initiative to fully integrate him into Klingon society. "Craig of Earth," Martok announced in the crowded council chambers, his voice resonating with authority. "You have proven yourself a warrior and an ally. Now, we offer you the chance to become one with the Empire through the rite of ascension." A murmur rippled through the assembled Klingon. Craig's eyes widened as he processed the implications. The rite of ascension was a sacred tradition, typically reserved for young Klingon coming of age. For a human to undertake, it was unheard of. "The rite will be modified to suit your unique circumstances," Martok continued. 3 trials will test your body, mind, and spirit. Complete them, and you will earn your place as a true citizen of the Klingon Empire. Craig felt the weight of countless eyes upon him. He glanced at Lursa, who gave him a subtle nod of encouragement. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward. "Chancellor, I accept this challenge with honor," Craig declared, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. The first trial began without warning. Craig found himself unceremoniously dropped in the heart of the Fekalachar Mountains, a vast and treacherous range known for its extreme conditions. Armed with only minimal supplies and his wits, he faced 10 days of grueling survival. The landscape was unforgiving. Jagged peaks clawed at the sky, while icy winds howled through narrow passes. Craig's engineering mindset kicked into overdrive as he assessed the surroundings and resources. On the 3rd day, as he huddled in a makeshift shelter, Craig heard a bone-chilling growl. He peered out to see a pack of saber-toothed targs, their razor-sharp tusks gleaming in the dim light. His heart raced as he realized the gravity of the situation. Drawing on his knowledge of Klingon fauna and his own technical expertise, Craig quickly devised a plan. Using components from his minimal gear and naturally occurring minerals, he constructed a crude but effective repellent device. The high-frequency sound it emitted kept the Tarks at bay, much to the astonishment of his unseen Klingon observers. As Craig navigated the wilderness, Zoe and Lursa faced battles of their own back in the capital. Conservative factions within the High Council questioned their relationship with Craig, seeing it as a threat to traditional Klingon values. Zoe, still recovering from her injuries but burning with warrior spirit, stood before the council alongside Lursa. "If any here doubt our honor or our right to choose our own path," Zoe declared, her voice ringing with challenge, "let them face us in ritual combat." The resulting duels became the talk of the Empire. Zoe and Lursa fought with skill and ferocity, their bat'leths singing through the air as they defended their honor and their choices. Their victories silenced many critics and further cemented their status as respected warriors. Meanwhile, the albino continued his campaign of terror. A series of coordinated attacks on key infrastructure points across Kynos left the Klingon military reeling. Power grids failed, communication networks crumbled, and chaos threatened to engulf the Empire. Chancellor Martok, recognizing the need for fresh perspectives, requested Craig's input even as he continued his trials. Through secure channels, Craig offered insights on fortifying vulnerable systems and implementing adaptive defense strategies. As Craig emerged from the wilderness, battered but unbroken, he faced his second trial, a test of mental acuity and cultural knowledge. In a grand hall filled with Klingon scholars and dignitaries, Craig engaged in a battle of wits that would determine his worthiness. "Explain the significance of Kala's victory at Ki," demanded a stern-faced scholar. Craig's mind raced, drawing on everything he had learned. "Kala's stand at Ki wasn't just a military victory," he began, his voice growing stronger as he spoke. "It was a demonstration of the Klingon ideal of individual heroism in service of the greater good. In many ways, it mirrors human legends like King Arthur or the Spartan 300. His unique perspective, bridging human and Klingon cultures, caught many off guard. Even his harshest critics found themselves grudgingly impressed by his insights and quick thinking. As Craig progressed through the trials, tensions rose between the Klingon Empire and the Federation. Admiral Elizabeth Taylor, concerned about Craig's deepening ties to Klingon society, attempted to intervene in the rite of ascension. "This process violates Mr. Ferguson's rights as a Federation citizen," Taylor argued before the High Council. "We demand it be halted immediately." Her words sparked outrage among the Klingon and placed Craig in an impossible position. He found himself torn between his human origins and his newfound Klingon identity, forced to navigate an increasingly precarious diplomatic tightrope. The final trial loomed before Craig, a combat test against Counselor Kravik, the charismatic leader of the Traditionalist faction. The battle, broadcast across the Klingon Empire, took on symbolic significance far beyond a simple contest of arms. As Craig stepped into the arena, bat'leth in hand, he felt the weight of two worlds on his shoulders. The roar of the crowd was deafening as Kravik approached, his eyes gleaming with the thrill of impending combat. "Today," Kravik growled, "we settle this human." Their weapons clashed in a shower of sparks. The battle begun. Craig moved with a fluidity born of countless hours training with Zoe and Lursa, matching Kravik's raw power with speed and ingenuity. As the duel reached its crescendo, chaos erupted. Explosions rocked the arena and smoke filled the air. The albino had launched his boldest attack yet, targeting the very heart of Klingon society. In that moment of crisis, Craig and Kravik locked eyes. Without a word, they turned as one to face the new threat, their rivalry forgotten in the face of a common enemy. Enemy? The arena erupted into chaos as Klingon warriors sprang into action, their battle cries mixing with the screams of panicked spectators. Craig and Kravik fought side by side, their earlier rivalry forgotten in the face of a common threat. As they battled their way through the smoke and debris, Craig caught glimpses of familiar faces in the fray. Zoe and Lursa were rallying a group of Klingon fighters, while Chancellor Martok barked orders to his security detail. In the midst of the mayhem, Craig's communicator crackled to life. "Craig," it was Admiral Taylor's voice, tight with urgency. "We're tracking multiple explosions across the city. The albinos' forces are everywhere." Craig's mind raced, assessing the situation. "Admiral, we need to coordinate our efforts. Can you get Federation security teams to assist the Klingon forces?" "Already on it," Taylor replied. "But Craig, this attack. It's not just about the Klingon anymore. The albino is targeting areas of human-Klingon cooperation. He's trying to drive a wedge between our peoples." As the immediate threat in the arena was contained, Craig found himself whisked away to an emergency session of the High Council. The chamber was a hive of activity, with counselors arguing fiercely over how to respond to the crisis. Chancellor Martok silenced the room with a thunderous shout. "Enough! This attack was not just on our people, but on the very future we are building." He turned to Craig, his expression grave. "Craig of Earth, you have proven yourself a true warrior of the Empire. Your actions today and in the trials you have faced have demonstrated your worth beyond any doubt." A hush fell over the chamber as Martok continued. "It is time we embrace the strength that comes from our diversity. Craig, I am appointing you as the head of a new governmental department focused on human-Klingon integration." The announcement sent shockwaves through the council. Some cheered, while others grumbled in dissent. Craig stood, stunned by the sudden turn of events. "Chancellor," he said, his voice steady despite his racing heart, "I am honored by your trust. I accept this position and vow to serve the Empire to the best of my abilities." In the days that followed, Craig threw himself into his new role with characteristic grit. He worked tirelessly to develop a comprehensive plan for cultural exchange, drawing on his engineering background to identify areas where human and Klingon technologies could be combined to create innovative solutions. One evening, as Craig pored over reports in his new office, Zoe and Lursa entered, their faces etched with concern. "Craig," Zoe began, her voice tight, "we received intelligence about the albino's next move. He's planning to target the new Human Cultural Center in the capital." Lursa nodded grimly. "Our sources say the attack is imminent. We need to act fast." Craig's mind whirled with possibilities. "We can't just play defense anymore," he said, standing up from his desk. "It's time we take the fight to the albino." He outlined his plan quickly, a special task force combining human tactical expertise with Klingon warrior skills. "We'll call it the Honor Guard," Craig explained, "a unit dedicated to hunting down the albino and his followers." Zoe and Lursa exchanged glances, a spark of excitement in their eyes. "We volunteer to lead the Honor Guard," Zoe declared, her hand resting on the hilt of her bat'leth. As they discussed the details of the new unit, alarms blared throughout the building. Craig's communicator chirped urgently. "Craig," it was Chancellor Martok's voice, strained with anger and grief. "The albino has struck. The Human Cultural Center. It's gone. There are many casualties." The news hit Craig like a physical blow. He looked at Zoe and Lursa, seeing his own shock and willpower mirrored in their faces. "Chancellor," Craig said, his voice tight with emotion, "I request immediate authorization to activate the Honor Guard. We're going to end this, once and for all." As Craig moved to implement his plan, he felt the weight of his new responsibilities pressing down on him. The blending of human and Klingon cultures he had dreamed of was now a reality, but it came with a steep price. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, both from the albino's terrorism and from those within the Empire who resisted change. Craig gazed out the window at the smoke rising from the city, his determination hardening. The Honor Guard would be the tip of the spear in this new era of cooperation. And he would be there, bridging the gap between two worlds, fighting for a future where humans and Klingons stood united against any threat. The smoke from the destroyed human cultural center had barely cleared when Craig's communicator chirped again. This time, it was Admiral Elizabeth Taylor, her voice taut with urgency. "Craig, we have a situation. Our long-range sensors have detected a massive ion storm approaching QNOS. It's unlike anything we've ever seen." Craig's mind raced, processing this new threat even as he coordinated the Honor Guard's deployment. "How long do we have, Admiral?" 48 hours at most. "Craig, this storm has the potential to knock out planetary communications and defense systems if it hits while the albino is still at large." The implications were clear. Craig turned to Zoe and Lursa, who had been listening intently. "We need to split our focus. The albino is an immediate threat, but this storm could leave us vulnerable to an even larger attack." Zoe nodded grimly. "What's the plan?" Craig's fingers flew over his console, pulling up schematics and data streams. "We'll divide our efforts. I'll take command of a new operation. Let's call it Kala's Shield. We'll deploy an orbital satellite network to dissipate the storm. Meanwhile, you two will lead the Honor Guard to capture the albino." Lursa's eyes gleamed with approval. A worthy challenge on both fronts. As Zoe and Lursa prepared to depart with the Honor Guard, Craig immersed himself in the technical challenges of Operation Kala's Shield. He assembled a team of human and Klingon scientists, their diverse backgrounds proving invaluable as they raced against time. The next 2 days were a blur of activity. Craig worked tirelessly, his engineering mind pushing the boundaries of what was possible. As the orbital satellites were launched, he oversaw every detail, making real-time adjustments to compensate for the storm's unpredictable patterns. Meanwhile, Zoe and Lursa led the Honor Guard in a daring assault on the albino's hidden base. Craig received intermittent updates, his heart pounding with each report of their progress. The hybrid human-Klingon tactics were proving effective, but the deteriorating weather conditions and communications blackouts added a layer of complexity to their mission. As the ion storm intensified, widespread power outages swept across QNOS. Craig stood in the command center, his face illuminated by the glow of emergency lighting. Around him, human and Klingon technicians worked in perfect synchronization, their shared goal transcending any cultural differences. "Satellite network is at 80% capacity," a young Klingon scientist reported. "But the storm's electromagnetic interference is stronger than we anticipated." Craig leaned over the console, his mind racing. "We need to synchronize the energy output with the storm's frequency. It's our only chance to create a cascading effect." As Craig's team worked to implement his solution, chaos erupted in the High Council chambers. Kempek, leader of the Traditionalist faction, called for an immediate vote of no confidence in Chancellor Martok. "How can we trust a leader who relies on humans while our world crumbles around us?" Kempek's voice boomed through the Great Hall. Martok rose to his feet, his voice cutting through the din. "It is precisely this cooperation that will save Q. Even now, Craig of Earth leads the effort to shield our world from destruction." As if on cue, the skies above the capital began to clear. Craig's team had achieved a breakthrough, their synchronized energy pulses beginning to break down the storm structure. In the albino's hidden base, Zoe and Lursa fought their way through the final defenses. Their movements were a deadly dance, human agility blending seamlessly with Klingon strength. As they cornered the albino, the terrorist revealed his last-ditch effort, a device that threatened to detonate a cache of explosives capable of destabilizing QNOS's crust. Craig's voice crackled over their communicators, providing rapid-fire instructions on how to disarm the device. Zoe's steady hands and Lursa's unwavering focus worked in tandem, following Craig's guidance to neutralize the threat. With the ion storm dissipating and the albino in custody, the political tide on QNOS shifted dramatically. Kempek withdrew his motion for a no-confidence vote, and the High Council erupted in cheers. Craig's name echoed through the chamber, a testament to his contributions and the power of human-Klingon cooperation. As the immediate crisis subsided, Craig found himself facing an unexpected challenge. Admiral Taylor's face appeared on his view screen, her expression grave. "Craig, the Federation Council has ordered your immediate recall to Earth. They're concerned about your level of integration into Klingon society." Craig felt as if the ground had shifted beneath his feet. He looked around the command center, at the humans and Klingon working side by side, at the fruits of their shared labor visible in the clearing skies above. He thought of Zoe and Lursa, of the bonds he had forged on this world that had become his home. "Admiral," he began, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind, "I understand the Federation's concerns, but my work here isn't finished. The integration we've achieved, the breakthroughs we've made, they're just the beginning." As Craig spoke, he could see the conflict in Taylor's eyes. She understood the importance of his role on Kanoas, but she was bound by her orders. "I'm sorry, Craig," she said softly, "but this isn't a request. You're to report to the Federation Embassy within 24 hours for transport back to Earth." The communication ended, leaving Craig standing in silence. The weight of the decision before him pressed down on his shoulders. He had to choose between his duty to Starfleet and his commitment to the future he was building on Kanoas. As he contemplated his next move, Craig knew that his decision would have far-reaching consequences for both the Federation and the Klingon Empire. Empire. Craig clenched his fists, his mind racing with the implications of Admiral Taylor's orders. Before he could formulate a response, Chancellor Martok burst into the command center, his eyes blazing with willpower. "Craig, I've heard about the Federation's recall order. This cannot stand." Craig turned to face the Chancellor, his expression a mix of gratitude and concern. "Chancellor, I appreciate your support, but I don't want to cause a diplomatic incident." Martok waved his hand dismissively. "The incident has already begun, but I have a solution that may satisfy both sides." The Chancellor outlined his bold proposal. Craig would serve as a joint ambassador, representing both Earth and Kanoas in a new interstellar coalition. This unprecedented role would allow him to maintain his connections to both worlds while furthering the cause of human-Klingon cooperation. Craig's eyes widened as he considered the implications. "It's an intriguing idea, Chancellor, but will the Federation agree to such an arrangement?" Martok grinned, revealing his sharp teeth. "They will if they know what's good for them. This is an opportunity for unprecedented access to Klingon culture and technology. They'd be fools to pass it up." Over the next few days, intense negotiations took place between Federation and Klingon representatives. Admiral Taylor, caught between her duty and her understanding of Craig's importance on Kanoas, argued passionately for the joint ambassadorship. Finally, after hours of heated debate, the Federation agreed to a trial period for this new arrangement. They dispatched a team of diplomats to work alongside Craig on Kanoas, including Dr. Sarah Taylor, Admiral Taylor's daughter, and a brilliant xenoanthropologist. As the diplomatic tensions eased, Craig found himself thrust into a whirlwind of personal and professional challenges. Preparations began for his formal union ceremony with Zoe and Lursa, an event that quickly became a galactic spectacle. Craig stood in his quarters, marveling at the ceremonial outfit crafted by Klingon artisans. The garment seamlessly blended human and Klingon design elements, its intricate patterns telling the story of his journey from Earth to Kanoas. Zoe entered the room, her eyes widening at the sight of Craig in his ceremonial attire. "You look remarkable," she said, her voice filled with pride and affection. Before Craig could respond, alarms blared throughout the complex. Lursa's voice crackled over the comm system. "Craig, Zoe, report to the Great Hall immediately. We have a situation." They rushed to the hall, finding it filled with a tense crowd of Klingon and off-world observers. At the center stood a group of fierce-looking Klingon warriors, led by a scarred veteran named Krun. Chancellor Martok's voice boomed across the hall. Craig of Earth, these warriors represent a faction of Klingon purists. They demand that you prove your worth as a mate for 2 Klingon women by undergoing the rite of 7 pains. A hushed murmur swept through the crowd. Craig stepped forward, his heart pounding but his voice steady. What exactly does this rite entail? Krun's eyes gleamed with a mix of challenge and respect. 7 trials, each more brutal than the last. It is an ancient ritual, long abandoned by the weak. But if you are truly worthy of joining our people, you will face it without hesitation. Craig felt Zoe and Lursa tense beside him. He knew they were torn between pride in his dedication and fear for his safety. He turned to face them, seeing the conflict in their eyes. "I'll do it," Craig said, his voice carrying across the now silent hall. "I accept the challenge of the rite of 7 pains." The hall erupted in a cacophony of cheers, protests, and heated discussions. Dr. Sarah Taylor pushed her way through the crowd, her eyes alight with academic interest. "Mr. Tucker, if you're going through with this, I'd like to document the process. This is a unique opportunity to study the evolution of Klingon cultural practices." Craig nodded, feeling the weight of not just Klingon expectations, but now Federation scrutiny as well. "Of course, Doctor. But first, I need to prepare." Over the next few days, Craig threw himself into intensive training with Zoe and Lursa. They drilled him in Klingon martial arts, pushing his body to its limits. Between training sessions, he continued his work on the joint Human-Klingon terraforming project, combining Earth's environmental management technologies with Klingon energy manipulation methods. The day of the first trial arrived all too quickly. Craig stood at the edge of a field of glowing hot coals, heavy weights chained to his arms and legs. The heat radiating from the coals was intense, causing sweat to bead on his forehead before he even began. Krun's voice cut through the tense silence. "Cross the field, human. Prove your strength and will." Craig took a deep breath, focusing his mind as Zoe and Lursa had taught him. With a determined step, he began his journey across the burning coals. Each step sent shockwaves of pain through his body, the weights pulling at his muscles as he struggled to maintain his balance. The gathered crowd watched in a mix of awe and concern as Craig pushed through the pain, his face contorted in concentration. Halfway across the field, he stumbled, nearly falling face first onto the scorching coals. A collective gasp rose from the onlookers. With a Herculean effort, Craig regained his footing and pressed on. His feet felt like they were on fire, but he refused to give in to the pain. As he reached the other side of the field, a cheer erupted from the Klingon spectators. Krun approached, his expression a mix of surprise and grudging respect. "You have passed the first trial, human. But do not celebrate yet. There are 6 more to come, each more challenging than the last." As Craig was led away for medical treatment, he caught sight of Dr. Taylor furiously taking notes. The implications of his actions were already rippling through both human and Klingon societies. He had taken the first step on a journey that would test not only his physical limits, but also the boundaries between their 2 cultures. In the shadows of the arena, a hooded figure watched the proceedings with keen interest. The albino, though imprisoned, had not lost his ability to influence events. As Craig was celebrated for his success, the terrorist's mind was already formulating a plan that would turn this moment of triumph into chaos. The stage was set for a clash of cultures, traditions, and personal ambitions. As Craig prepared for the next trial, the fate of human-Klingon relations hung in the balance, with the galaxy watching to see what would unfold on Konos. Konos, a world that had once seemed alien and hostile to Craig, now pulsed with an energy that matched his own perseverance. As he prepared for the final trial of the rite of 7 pains, the capital city hummed with anticipation. Klingon and off-worlders alike crowded the streets, their conversations a mix of excitement and speculation about the human who had defied all expectations. Craig stood at the entrance to the arena, his body still bearing the marks of the 6 trials he had already endured. Zoe and Lursa flanked him, their presence a source of strength and comfort. "Remember," Zoe said, her voice low and intense, "the Gauntlet of Targ is designed to test more than just physical prowess. It's about adaptability and quick thinking." Lursa nodded in agreement. "Use your human ingenuity. It's what has brought you this far." Craig took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "I'm ready," he said, his voice steady despite the nerves churning in his stomach. As he stepped into the arena, the roar of the crowd washed over him. He scanned the sea of faces, noting the mix of anticipation and skepticism. Chancellor Martok sat in his place of honor, his expression unreadable. The first obstacle loomed before Craig, a towering rock wall with edges that gleamed wickedly in the morning light. As he began his ascent, the crowd's roar intensified. Suddenly, heavy stones rained down from above. Craig's muscles strained as he dodged and climbed, his fingers finding purchase on the smallest of ledges. Halfway up the wall, a particularly large stone caught him off guard. It grazed his shoulder, nearly dislodging him. Craig gritted his teeth against the pain, using the momentum of the impact to swing himself to a more secure position. The crowd's reaction was a mix of gasps and cheers. At the top of the wall, Craig paused to catch his breath. The next section of the course stretched before him, a dense tangle of vegetation that seemed to writhe with malevolent energy. As he approached, the acrid smell of the plants stung his nostrils. Craig's mind raced, recalling the countless hours he had spent studying Klingon flora. He identified a non-toxic plant with broad, sturdy leaves and quickly fashioned a makeshift armor. The thorns of the poisonous vines scraped against the improvised protection as he pushed through, leaving him battered but unharmed. As Craig emerged from the vegetation, a series of explosions rocked the arena. The force field containing the more dangerous obstacles flickered and failed. Panic rippled through the crowd as creatures, previously held at bay, began to escape into the arena. A group of Targs, their tusks gleaming and eyes wild, charged towards Craig. Without hesitation, he grabbed handfuls of the thorny vines he had just navigated and quickly wove them into a makeshift barrier. The Targs slammed into the thorny wall, their charge halted by the pain of the sharp spines. The crowd's panic turned to awe at Craig's quick thinking. Even some of the most skeptical Klingon nodded in grudging approval. In the chaos, movement at the edge of the arena caught Craig's eye. The albino, seizing the opportunity created by the explosions, had overpowered his guards and was fighting his way towards an emergency exit. Craig's mind raced. The final obstacle, a pit of molten lava with precarious platforms, still lay before him. But the albino's escape could not go unchallenged. In a split-second decision, Craig altered his course. He leapt onto the first platform over the lava pit, using it as a springboard to launch himself towards the fleeing criminal. The heat from the lava seared his skin as he soared over it, but Craig's focus remained unbroken. He collided with the albino, sending them both crashing to the ground. The terrorist's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed with fury. They grappled on the arena floor, each seeking an advantage. Craig's training with Zoe and Lursa proved invaluable. He blended human martial arts with Klingon techniques, matching the albino's raw strength with agility and precision. The crowd's attention shifted fully to this unexpected battle, Klingon voices rising in appreciation of the combat. Chancellor Martok leaned forward in his seat, his eyes gleaming. With a quick gesture, he ordered the arena's cameras to broadcast the fight across the Empire. Zoe and Lursa appeared at the edge of the fray, poised to intervene. Craig caught their eye and shook his head slightly. This was his fight to win. The battle raged on, both combatants showing signs of fatigue. The albino's experience was formidable, but Craig's unique fighting style kept him off balance. In a final, decisive move, Craig feinted with a Klingon technique before switching to a human grappling move. The albino, caught off guard, found himself pinned to the ground. As the terrorist struggled in vain against Craig's hold, the arena erupted in thunderous applause. Chancellor Martok rose to his feet, his voice booming over the din. The trial is complete. Craig of Earth has proven his worth not only through the gauntlet of Targ, but by defeating a sworn enemy of the Empire. Craig rose unsteadily to his feet, his body aching from the trials and the fight. Zoe and Lursa rushed to his side, supporting him as medical teams approached. The sisters' eyes shone with pride and affection, a display broadcast across the Empire. As Craig was led away for treatment, Dr. Sarah Taylor pushed through the crowd, her eyes wide with excitement. "Mr. Tucker," she called, "what you've accomplished here today, it's unprecedented. The implications for interspecies cultural exchange are enormous." Craig managed a tired smile. "Doctor, right now I'm more concerned with making sure all my limbs are still attached." As the adrenaline of the day began to fade, Craig realized that while he had overcome the physical challenges set before him, the true test was just beginning. The eyes of both the Klingon Empire and the Federation were upon him, and the path ahead promised to be no less challenging than the trials he had just endured. The path ahead promised to be no less challenging than the trials he had just faced. As Craig recuperated in the medical bay, the Klingon High Council convened an emergency session to address the unprecedented events. Chancellor Martok strode into the council chamber, his eyes gleaming with purpose. The assembled Klingon leaders fell silent as he took his place at the head of the table. "Honored members of the High Council," Martok began, his voice carrying across the room, "we stand at a crossroads. The human, Craig, has not only completed the rite of 7 pains, but has also defeated a sworn enemy of the Empire. We must seize this opportunity to strengthen our ties with the Federation." Murmurs rippled through the council as Martok paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Then, with a decisive gesture, he continued, "I propose the creation of a new diplomatic position, Ambassador of Cultural Integration, and I nominate Craig of Earth as the inaugural appointee." The council chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices. Some council members voiced their support, while others raised objections. Martok allowed the debate to continue for several minutes before raising his hand for silence. "We have seen the strength of this human," he declared. "He has proven his worth through Klingon trials and demonstrated his value to our empire. This new position will allow us to harness his unique perspective and further our understanding of human culture while sharing our own." After hours of heated discussion, the High Council voted. The majority approved Martok's proposal, setting in motion a series of events that would reshape human-Klingon relations. Meanwhile, in the medical bay, Craig was beginning to regain his strength. Zoe and Lursa sat by his bedside, their faces a mix of pride and concern. Dr. Sarah Taylor hovered nearby, her data pad in hand, as she continued to document Craig's recovery. "The rite of 7 pains," Dr. Taylor mused, her eyes alight with academic curiosity. "I've never seen such a comprehensive display of Klingon cultural practices. The data I've collected will revolutionize our understanding of Klingon physiology and psychology." Craig managed a weak smile. "Glad my suffering could contribute to science, Doctor." Before Dr. Taylor could respond, the door to the medical bay slid open. Chancellor Martok entered, followed by several members of the High Council. The room fell silent as the Chancellor approached Craig's bed. "Craig of Earth," Martok announced, his voice carrying the weight of official proclamation, "the High Council has created a new position, Ambassador of Cultural Integration. We have chosen you to fill this role." Craig's eyes widened in surprise. He glanced at Zoe and Lursa, who looked equally stunned. "Chancellor, I'm honored, but I'm not sure I'm qualified for such a position." Martok's laugh filled the room. You have already done more to bridge our cultures than any diplomat. Your union with Zoe and Lursa, your completion of the Rite of Seven Pains, and your defeat of the albino, these actions speak louder than any words. As the implications of this new role began to sink in, Craig's mind raced with possibilities. He thought of the technologies he had been working on, the blend of human and Klingon approaches that had yielded such promising results. "Chancellor," Craig said, his voice growing stronger, "I accept this position, but I have a request. I'd like to organize a cultural exchange fair here on Kunes, a chance for humans in Klingon to showcase their traditions, technologies, and arts." Martok's eyes gleamed with approval. "An excellent idea, Ambassador. Make it so." As the Chancellor and his entourage left, Craig turned to Zoe and Lursa. "Well," he said with a grin, "it looks like our union ceremony just got a lot more complicated." Over the next few weeks, as Craig recovered and began his duties as ambassador, news of his appointment spread across the galaxy. Federation worlds clamored for invitations to the upcoming union ceremony, which had transformed into a grand diplomatic gathering. Craig found himself thrust into a whirlwind of activity. He worked with Klingon tacticians to develop security protocols for the influx of off-worlders, blending human crowd control techniques with Klingon warrior discipline. The capital city of Kyonoas buzzed with preparations, Klingon artisans collaborating with human designers to create ceremonial decorations that fuse both cultures. As the date of the ceremony drew near, Craig received an urgent message from a human colony on a nearby Klingon-controlled planet. The colonists, facing pressure to abandon their human heritage, sought his assistance. Recognizing the delicate nature of the situation, Craig decided to visit the colony personally. Accompanied by Zoe and Lursa, Craig arrived on the colony world to find a tense standoff between human colonists and Klingon officials. The human leader, Elena Martinez, greeted them with a mixture of hope and wariness. "Ambassador," Elena said, her voice tight with suppressed emotion, "we've lived here for generations, but now we're being told to give up everything that makes us human. Surely there must be a way for our cultures to coexist?" Craig nodded, his mind already formulating a plan. "I believe there is, Elena, and I think I know just how to start." As Craig began to outline his idea for a cultural exchange fair on the colony, similar to the one planned for Kunoes, he could see the spark of possibility ignite in Elena's eyes. The stage was set for a pivotal moment in human-Klingon relations, with the fate of the colony hanging in the balance. Balance. Craig's mind raced with the challenges ahead, but he pushed those thoughts aside for now. There was still much work to be done before the union ceremony. As the date of the ceremony drew closer, tensions on Kos reached a fever pitch. The conservative faction, led by the formidable Kmpek, intensified their protests against the human-Klingon union. Their chants echoed through the streets of the capital, growing louder with each passing day. Craig stood at the window of his quarters, watching as a group of demonstrators marched past, their faces contorted with anger. He turned to Zoe and Lursa, who were reviewing security reports nearby. "We need to take action," Craig said, his voice firm. "These protests are getting out of hand." Zoe nodded, her eyes scanning the latest intelligence briefing. "The situation is volatile. Kmpek's followers are growing bolder." "Then we must be prepared," Lursa added, her hand resting on the hilt of her DK Tog. Craig moved to a large holographic display in the center of the room. With a few quick gestures, he brought up a detailed map of the Great Hall and its surroundings. "I've been working on a new security protocol," he explained, manipulating the hologram to highlight key areas. "We'll combine human crowd control techniques with Klingon warrior tactics. A multi-layered defense system." As Craig outlined his plan, Zoe and Lursa listened intently, occasionally offering suggestions or pointing out potential weaknesses. The trio worked late into the night, refining the security measures until they were satisfied. The next morning, Craig met with the Joint Human-Klingon Security Task Force to implement the new protocols. He stood before a diverse group of officers, their uniforms a mix of Starfleet gold and Klingon armor. "We face a unique challenge," Craig began, his voice carrying across the room. "Our goal is to ensure the safety of all attendees while respecting the cultural significance of this event." He activated a holographic display, showing the newly designed security system. "We'll be deploying cloak security drones, a collaborative effort between human and Klingon engineers. These will monitor the perimeter of the ceremony grounds, providing real-time intelligence without being visible to potential threats." As Craig continued his briefing, he noticed a commotion at the back of the room. Chancellor Martok entered, his face grave. The Chancellor gestured for Craig to join him in a private conversation. "Ambassador," Martok said in a low voice, "we've received reports of increased Romulan activity along our border. I must divert significant military resources to fortify our defenses." Craig's brow furrowed. How will this affect security for the ceremony? Martok's expression was grim. "The capital will have a reduced security presence. You'll need to adapt your plans accordingly." As Craig absorbed this new information, an aide rushed into the room, breathless with urgency. "Ambassador, Chancellor," she said, bowing slightly, "we received a communique from a newly discovered species. They call themselves the Zarthak and are requesting permission to attend the ceremony." Craig exchanged a glance with Martok. The arrival of an unknown species added yet another layer of complexity to an already challenging situation. "What do we know about them?" Craig asked. The aide consulted her data pad. "Initial reports indicate they possess empathic abilities and have a complex social structure. They express interest in studying our cultural integration efforts." Craig's mind raced, weighing the potential benefits and risks. After a moment's consideration, he nodded. "We'll host them. This could be an opportunity to further our cause of interspecies cooperation." As the aide hurried off to make arrangements, Martok placed a hand on Craig's shoulder. "You take a great risk, Ambassador, but perhaps it is a necessary one." Craig returned to the security briefing, his mind buzzing with new possibilities and potential dangers. As he outlined the updated plans to the assembled officers, he couldn't shake the feeling that the true challenges were yet to come. Later that evening, as Craig reviewed the final security arrangements with Zoe and Lursa, an urgent message came through. The color drained from his face as he read the contents. "Intelligence reports suggest a potential assassination plot against me," he said, his voice tight. "A group of extremists, both human and Klingon, have infiltrated the city." Zoe's eyes narrowed. "We need to alter the ceremony plans. The traditional procession through the streets is too risky." Lursa nodded in agreement. "An enclosed venue would be safer, though it will disappoint many who wish to witness the event." Craig sighed heavily, knowing the decision he had to make. "We'll move the ceremony indoors. It's not ideal, but it's necessary." As night fell over Kus, Craig stood on the balcony of his quarters, looking out over the city. The capital glowed with an uneasy energy, the air thick with anticipation and tension. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, knowing that the coming days would test him like never before. Zoe and Lursa joined him, each placing a hand on his shoulders. For a moment, they stood in silence, drawing strength from each other's presence. Then, without a word, they turned and went inside to prepare for the challenges that lay ahead. As dawn broke on the day of the ceremony, the capital of Kus buzzed with activity. The air was electric with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Craig stood at the window of his preparation chamber, watching as the first rays of sunlight touched the imposing architecture of the Great Hall. He could hear the distant chants of Kompek's protesters, their voices carrying on the morning breeze. Closer to the hall, he saw a gathering of supporters, their banners proclaiming unity between humans and Klingon. The juxtaposition of the two groups created a palpable tension that seemed to permeate the entire city. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Zoe and Lursa entered, their ceremonial attire a striking blend of human and Klingon designs. Craig felt a surge of pride and affection as he looked at them. "It's time," Zoe said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. Craig nodded, taking a deep breath to center himself. He checked his communicator one last time, confirming that the security measures were in place. The cloaked drones were operational, their invisible presence providing an extra layer of protection around the hall. As they made their way to the entrance of the Great Hall, Craig could feel the eyes of countless onlookers upon them. The normally bustling streets had been cleared, creating an eerie calm broken only by the distant sounds of the demonstrations. Suddenly, a series of explosions rocked the outer perimeter of the security zone. The ground shook, and cries of alarm rose from the crowd. Craig's hand instinctively went to the concealed phaser at his side, but before he could react, the joint human-Klingon security force sprang into action. "Maintain formation," Craig shouted over the din, his voice carrying the authority of both his diplomatic position and his Klingon training. "Proceed as planned." Despite the chaos, Craig, Zoe, and Lursa continued their march toward the Great Hall. The security teams moved with precision, quickly containing the threat and preventing widespread panic. As they reached the massive doors of the hall, Craig turned to address the assembled dignitaries and guests. "Today, we stand united in the face of those who would divide us," he began, his voice strong and clear. "This ceremony is more than a union between individuals or even cultures. It is a testament to the strength we find in our differences and the peace we can forge through understanding." As Craig spoke, he scanned the crowd, noting the mix of human, Klingon, and other species present. His eyes fell on the Zarthak delegation, their alien features a reminder of the vast diversity of the galaxy. He saw curiosity in their eyes, and perhaps something more, a glimmer of hope for what this union might represent. Just as Craig was about to conclude his speech, a shimmer in the air caught his attention. His combat instincts, honed through rigorous training with Zoe and Lursa, kicked in immediately. "Everyone down!" he shouted, diving to push his brides to be out of harm's way. In that instant, a group of cloaked figures materialized within the Great Hall. Their Romulan features were unmistakable, their disruptors raised and ready to fire. The hall erupted into chaos as security forces clashed with the intruders, and diplomats scrambled for cover. Craig found himself in the thick of the battle, his human ingenuity blending seamlessly with his Klingon combat training. He moved with fluid grace, disarming one Romulan assassin with a swift strike before using the captured weapon to stun another. Beside him, Zoe and Lursa fought with equal ferocity. Zoe's Starfleet tactical training complemented Lursa's Klingon warrior skills, creating a formidable defense against the Romulan assault. As the battle raged on, Craig's mind raced. He knew that this attack was more than just an assassination attempt. It was a calculated move to destabilize the fragile alliance between the Federation and the Klingon Empire. The presence of the Romulan operatives pointed to a larger geopolitical game at play, one that threatened to unravel years of diplomatic progress. Amidst the chaos, Craig caught sight of the Zarthak delegation. Their empathic abilities seemed to be causing them distress in the emotionally charged atmosphere. Making a split-second decision, Craig fought his way towards them, determined to ensure their safety and prevent an interstellar incident. As he reached the Zarthak, a Romulan disruptor beam narrowly missed his head. Craig spun around, facing his attacker with stubborn persistence. He knew that the outcome of this conflict would shape not only his personal future, but the course of interstellar relations for years to come. With the lives of countless diplomats at stake and the ceremony in shambles, Craig realized that this crisis could either tear apart the fragile alliances he had worked so hard to build or become an opportunity to demonstrate the true strength of unity in diversity. As he prepared to face the next wave of Romulan attackers, Craig's mind was already formulating a plan to turn this disaster into a triumph of interspecies cooperation. Cooperation as he prepared to face the next wave of Romulan attackers. Craig's mind was already formulating a plan to turn this disaster into a triumph of interspecies unity. With a swift motion, Craig activated his communicator, broadcasting his voice throughout the Great Hall. All security forces converge on the Romulan infiltrators. Protect the diplomats at all costs. The response was immediate. Human and Klingon security teams moved in perfect synchronization, their training paying off in this moment of crisis. Craig watched with pride as Starfleet officers fought side by side with Klingon warriors, their diverse tactics blending seamlessly to push back the Romulan assault. As the battle raged on, Chancellor Martok fought his way to Craig's side. "Ambassador," he growled, deflecting a disruptor blast with his bat'leth, "we must secure the hall and ensure the safety of our guests." Craig nodded, his eyes scanning the chaos around him. "Agreed. We need to." His words were cut short by a deafening explosion that rocked the building. Debris rained down from the ceiling, and acrid smoke filled the air. As the dust settled, Craig saw that a section of the wall had been blown open, creating a gaping hole that exposed the interior of the Great Hall to the streets outside. Through the breach poured a fresh wave of attackers. Not Romulans this time, but angry protesters wielding makeshift weapons. Craig recognized some of them as K'mpek's followers, their faces contorted with rage as they charged into the fray. "Chancellor," Craig shouted over the din, "we need to evacuate the diplomats now. This situation is spiraling out of control." Martok nodded grimly. "Agreed. But this attack cannot go unanswered. The honor of the Empire is at stake." Without hesitation, Martok raised his voice in a thunderous roar that cut through the chaos. "Attention! By my authority as Chancellor, I hereby declare a state of emergency on Kys. All off-world visitors are to be escorted to safe locations immediately." As Klingon guards began ushering shocked dignitaries toward the exits, Martok turned to Craig. "Ambassador, your actions today have proven your worth to the Empire. I am appointing you as head of a special task force to investigate this Romulan infiltration and strengthen our defenses." Craig's eyes widened at the unexpected honor, but he quickly composed himself. "I accept, Chancellor. What are your orders?" "Implement a planet-wide security sweep," Martok commanded. "Use every resource at your disposal, both human and Klingon. We must root out any remaining Romulan agents and secure our borders." Craig's mind raced with possibilities. "I have an idea, Chancellor. We'll combine human cybersecurity expertise with Klingon intelligence gathering. It's time to show the galaxy what our alliance can truly achieve." As if on cue, Zoe and Lursa fought their way through the crowd to join them. "Craig," Zoe called out, her uniform singed but her tenacity unshaken, "we've managed to secure most of the off-world delegates, but the situation outside is deteriorating rapidly." Lursa nodded in agreement, her DK tog dripping with the blood of fallen enemies. "The protesters are growing more violent. We need to act quickly." Craig turned to his partners, his expression grim but resolute. "Zoe, Lursa, I need you to coordinate the evacuation and protection of the remaining delegates. Your combined skills in crisis management will be crucial." As Zoe and Lursa hurried off to carry out their mission, Craig activated his communicator once more. "Attention all human cybersecurity experts and Klingon intelligence officers. Report to the Central Command Center immediately. We have work to do." Within hours, the Great Hall had been transformed into a bustling command center. Humans and Klingon worked side by side, their contrasting approaches to problem-solving creating a uniquely effective investigative force. Craig stood at the center of it all, directing operations with a calm efficiency that belied the chaos of the past few hours. Holographic displays flickered around him, showing real-time data from the ongoing security sweep. "Sir," a young Klingon officer called out, "we've detected an anomaly in the northeastern sector of the capital." Craig moved swiftly to the officer's station, studying the readout. "Interesting. The energy signature doesn't match any known Klingon or Federation technology. Could be a Romulan listening post." He turned to a human analyst nearby. "Run a cross-reference with all known Romulan communication frequencies. Let's see if we can crack their encryption." As the team worked tirelessly through the night, reports began flooding in from across the planet. Hidden Romulan outposts were being discovered and neutralized at an astonishing rate, each success a testament to the effectiveness of the human-Klingon collaboration. Dawn was breaking over the capital when Craig received an urgent message. The Zarthak delegation requested an immediate audience. Intrigued, Craig made his way to their quarters, wondering what new development awaited him. The Zarthak ambassador greeted Craig with a solemn bow. "Ambassador Craig, we have observed the events of the past day with great interest. We believe we can offer assistance in your efforts to root out hidden threats." Craig listened intently as the Zarthak explained their proposal. Their empathic abilities, they claimed, could be used to detect deception and hidden intentions, potentially identifying disguised Romulan agents where technology might fail. It was a tempting offer, but Craig immediately recognized the potential complications. Many Klingon would view such mental probing as a violation of their privacy and honor. He needed to find a way to utilize this valuable resource without alienating his Klingon allies. As Craig pondered this new challenge, he realized that the true test of his leadership was just beginning. The Romulan attack had been thwarted, but the task of securing Konoes and preserving the fragile human-Klingon alliance would require all of his diplomatic skill and ingenuity. With a determined set to his jaw, Craig prepared to present the Zarthak's offer to Chancellor Martok and the High Council. He knew that the decisions made in the coming days would shape not only the future of Konoes, but the balance of power throughout the quadrant for years to come. As Craig left the Zarthak quarters, his mind racing with possibilities, he was met by Zoe and Lursa. Their faces showed a mix of exhaustion and dedication, mirroring his own state after the long night of crisis management. "How did it go?" Zoe asked, falling into step beside him. Craig briefed them on the Zarthak offer as they made their way to the High Council chambers. The corridors bustled with activity, a stark contrast to the eerie silence that had fallen over the capital in the immediate aftermath of the attack. "It's a tempting proposal," Lursa mused, her warrior's instincts clearly intrigued by the tactical advantage such abilities could provide. "But I foresee resistance from many of our people. The idea of alien minds probing their thoughts." She left the sentence unfinished, her grimace speaking volumes. As they approached the chambers, Craig noticed an unusual amount of commotion. Klingon warriors and human diplomats alike were gathered in small groups, their voices a low buzz of urgent conversation. The trio exchanged glances, sensing that something significant had occurred during their brief absence. Chancellor Martok's booming voice greeted them as they entered the chamber. "Ah, Ambassador Craig, your timing is impeccable. We have much to discuss." The chamber fell silent as Craig stepped forward. Martok's face was grim, but there was a glint in his eye that Craig had come to recognize as a sign of anticipation for a worthy challenge. "The High Council has reached a decision," Martok announced. "In light of recent events, we believe it is time to put our alliance to the ultimate test. Ambassador Craig, you will debate Kempek, the leader of the opposition, on the future of human-Klingon relations." A murmur rippled through the assembled crowd. Craig felt a surge of adrenaline course through his body. This was an unprecedented opportunity, but also a tremendous risk. A poor performance could undo years of diplomatic progress. "Chancellor, I am honored by your trust," Craig replied, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "When will this debate take place?" "In 3 days' time," Martok declared. It will be held in the heart of the capital, open to all who wish to attend. The eyes of the Empire and the Federation will be upon you. As the implications of this announcement sank in, the chamber erupted into a flurry of activity. Craig found himself at the center of a whirlwind of preparations. Advisors from both human and Klingon camps approached him, offering strategies and insights. Zoe and Lursa immediately sprang into action, their complementary skills creating an efficient support system. Zoe began coordinating with the Human Diplomatic Corps, ensuring that Craig would have access to the latest intelligence and policy briefings. Lursa, drawing on her extensive network within Klingon society, set about gathering information on K'mpek's likely arguments and vulnerabilities. The next 3 days passed in a blur of intense preparation. Craig secluded himself with Zoe and Lursa in a fortified compound on the outskirts of the city, diving deep into Klingon history, law, and cultural nuances. Zoe focused on refining Craig's command of the Klingon language, knowing that his ability to articulate complex ideas in their native tongue would be crucial. Lursa, meanwhile, took charge of security preparations. She worked tirelessly with both Klingon and human security forces to develop a comprehensive plan to protect the debate venue. The recent Romulan attack had highlighted the need for heightened vigilance, and Lursa was determined to leave nothing to chance. As the day of the debate drew near, Craig received an unexpected visitor. Krun, the leader of the Klingon purists who had once challenged Craig to the right of 7 panes, arrived at the compound seeking a private audience. Craig met him in a Spartan room adorned only with traditional Klingon weapons, a subtle reminder of the path Craig had chosen to walk between 2 worlds. Krun's face was as stern as ever, but there was a new quality to his gaze as he regarded Craig. "Ambassador," Krun began, his voice gruff but not hostile, "I have come to offer you my support." Craig raised an eyebrow, surprised by this unexpected turn of events. "Your support, Krun? I was under the impression that you opposed everything I stand for." Krun's lip curled in what might have been a smile or a grimace. "I oppose what I thought you stood for, human. But your actions during the Romulan crisis. You fought with the heart of a true Klingon. You have proven your dedication to our ways." As Krun shared insights into the traditionalist mindset, Craig listened intently, recognizing the value of this unexpected alliance. By the time Krun departed, Craig had gained a new perspective that he knew would be invaluable in the coming debate. The eve of the debate arrived, bringing with it a palpable sense of anticipation that seemed to permeate the very air of the capital. Craig, Zoe, and Lursa gathered in their private quarters for a moment of reflection and connection. They performed a private bonding ritual, a fusion of human and Klingon traditions that they had developed over their time together. As they recited ancient oaths and exchanged tokens of their commitment, Craig felt a surge of strength and dedication. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew he would face them with these 2 remarkable women by his side. As dawn broke on the day of the debate, Craig stood at the window of their compound, looking out over the sprawling Klingon capital. In the distance, he could see the massive outdoor arena that had been constructed for the event, its design a testament to the blending of human and Klingon engineering prowess. Zoe appeared at his side, her hand finding his. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. Craig took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied, his voice steady. "Today, we make history, one way or another." Lursa joined them, her warrior stance radiating confidence. "Then let us go and show them the true strength of our union," she declared. Together, they stepped out into the Klingon morning, ready to face whatever challenges the debate and the future might bring. Together, they stepped out into the Klingon morning, ready to face whatever challenges the debate and the future might hold. The debate proved to be a turning point in human-Klingon relations. Craig's impassioned arguments, delivered in flawless Klingon, swayed many who had been skeptical of the alliance. His ability to blend human ideals with Klingon values struck a chord with the audience, and even Compet grudgingly acknowledged the strength of Craig's position. In the days that followed, as news of the debate's success spread across the Empire, Craig found himself thrust into an even more pivotal role. The looming Romulan threat demanded immediate action, and Chancellor Martok wasted no time in mobilizing the Empire's resources. Craig, Zoe, and Lursa were summoned to the Great Hall, where Martok had established a war room in the heart of the Klingon capital. The cavernous space buzzed with activity as Klingon warriors and human strategists worked side by side, their differences set aside in the face of a common enemy. "Ambassador," Martok greeted them, his voice gruff but tinged with respect. "Your performance in the debate has earned you the right to lead our defense efforts. What do you propose?" Craig surveyed the room, his mind already racing with possibilities. "Chancellor, we need to combine our strengths, human strategic planning, with Klingon battle tactics. I suggest we start by developing a comprehensive defense plan that draws on both of our experiences." Zoe stepped forward, her eyes alight with grit. "I can organize cross-species combat training exercises. We'll create a fighting style that blends human techniques with Klingon traditions." Lursa nodded approvingly. "And I will put my intelligence network to work. We must root out any Romulan agents that may have infiltrated our defenses." As the trio set to work, the war room became a hub of frenetic activity. Craig found himself at the center of it all, coordinating efforts between human and Klingon forces. He initiated a bold technological project, proposing the creation of a hybrid human-Klingon cloaking device. "Imagine," he explained to a group of skeptical scientists, "the stealth capabilities of Klingon cloaking systems combined with the advanced sensor arrays of Federation starships. It could give us an unparalleled advantage." The project faced resistance from both sides, but Craig's persuasive arguments and the pressing need for innovation eventually won out. Soon, human and Klingon scientists were working together, pushing the boundaries of their technological expertise. Meanwhile, Zoe's training program was taking shape. In a vast arena on the outskirts of the capital, humans and Klingon grappled and sparred, learning to anticipate each other's moves and complement their fighting styles. "Again!" Zoe barked, watching as a human officer and a Klingon warrior circled each other. "Remember, use your opponent's strength against them. Humans, don't try to overpower the Klingon. Klingon, don't underestimate human agility." The training sessions were intense, often leaving participants bruised and exhausted. But with each passing day, the two species grew more in sync, their movements becoming fluid and complementary. Lursa's efforts bore fruit as well. Her team uncovered a plot by Romulan agents to sabotage key Klingon defense installations. Working alongside human cybersecurity experts, she led a covert operation to secure Klingon military networks against Romulan hacking attempts. "We've identified the weak points in our system," Lursa reported during a late-night strategy session. "The human experts have developed a new encryption protocol that should keep the Romulans out." As the preparations intensified, Craig found himself working around the clock. The constant pressure began to take its toll, not just on him, but on his relationships with Zoe and Lursa. Long hours in the war room left little time for personal interaction, and Craig could sense a growing distance between them. Recognizing the need to address this issue, Craig made a decision. He approached Martok with a request for a brief leave of absence. "Chancellor, I believe a short respite would allow us to return to our duties with renewed focus and energy," Craig explained. Martok studied him for a moment before nodding. "Very well, Ambassador, but make it quick. The Empire needs you at your best." Craig organized a private retreat for the three of them at a secluded Klingon monastery. As they arrived at the ancient stone structure, perched high in the mountains, Craig felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "This place has stood for 1,000 years, Lursa said, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "It has seen the rise and fall of empires. It reminds us of what truly endures. During their stay, they participated in ancient Klingon bonding rituals. In the flickering light of torches, they recited age-old odes, their voices echoing off the monastery walls. The rituals, both physical and spiritual, deepened their connection in ways Craig hadn't thought possible. As they prepared to return to the capital, Craig felt reinvigorated. The bond between them had been strengthened, tempered like Klingon steel in the forge of shared experience and mutual devotion. Their return coincided with troubling news. Intelligence reports indicated that the Romulan fleet was amassing along the Klingon border, testing the Empire's defenses and probing for weaknesses. Craig saw an opportunity in this development. "We can use this to our advantage," he explained to Martok and the High Council. "We'll present false vulnerabilities, mislead their forces." He outlined a plan to deploy a network of cloak sensor platforms along the border, utilizing the newly developed hybrid cloaking technology. These platforms would provide real-time intelligence on Romulan fleet movements while remaining undetected. As the crisis deepened, Craig found himself walking a diplomatic tightrope. The Federation, concerned about the potential for full-scale war, dispatched an envoy to Konoes. Craig was tasked with mediating between Federation peace initiatives and Klingon war preparations. "We must be prepared for battle," he argued in a tense meeting with Federation representatives. "But we must also leave the door open for diplomacy. The strength of our alliance can be a powerful deterrent." Just as it seemed the situation couldn't become more complex, Craig received alarming intelligence about a potential Romulan first strike. The information landed like a photon torpedo in the war room, sending ripples of tension through the assembled leaders. Craig knew he faced a critical decision. The choice between advocating for a preemptive attack or maintaining a defensive posture would shape not only the immediate conflict, but the future of Klingon foreign policy and his own standing. Within the Empire, after hours of intense deliberation with Zoe, Lursa, and the Klingon High Command, Craig proposed a daring plan. "We use our new hybrid cloaking technology to secretly position a joint human-Klingon fleet behind Romulan lines," he explained, his voice steady despite the audacity of the suggestion. The room erupted in a mix of approval and skepticism. Martok leaned forward, his one good eye fixed on Craig. "And who would lead this perilous mission, Ambassador?" Craig met the Chancellor's gaze unflinchingly. "I will, Chancellor, along with Zoe and Lursa. Our combined skills give us the best chance of success." As the Assembly absorbed the implications of this proposal, alarms suddenly blared throughout the war room. A junior officer burst in, his face pale with urgency. "Chancellor, Ambassador, we have reports of Romulan ships violating Klingon space." The room fell silent for a heartbeat before exploding into action. Craig exchanged glances with Zoe and Lursa, a wordless communication passing between them. They knew that the success or failure of their mission could mean the difference between war and peace in the quadrant. As they rushed to prepare for their departure, Craig couldn't shake the feeling that they were embarking on the most crucial mission of their lives. The fate of the Empire, the Alliance, and perhaps the entire quadrant hung in the balance. Boarding their specially modified bird of prey, equipped with the experimental cloaking device, Craig took a moment to address his companions. "Whatever happens out there," he began, his voice low but intense, "know that it has been my greatest honor to serve alongside you both." Zoe smiled, her eyes glinting with a mix of affection and drive. "Let's show the Romulans what this alliance is truly capable of." Lursa nodded, her hand resting on the hilt of her DK Tog. "For the Empire, for the Federation, for us." As the Bird Dove Prey's engines hummed to life, Craig took his place at the command chair. He gave the order to engage the cloaking device, and the ship shimmered out of view. As the ship accelerated away from Kunas, Craig felt a surge of anticipation mixed with trepidation. Their mission into Romulan space had barely begun when the first complication arose. The experimental hybrid cloaking device, a marvel of human and Klingon engineering, began to fluctuate. Warning lights flashed across the control panel, and Craig's heart raced as he realized the gravity of the situation. "We're at risk of decloaking," he announced, his fingers flying over the console. "Zoe, Lursa, take tactical stations. I need to stabilize the system." As Zoe and Lursa moved to their positions, Craig delved into the ship systems. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he worked to isolate the problem. The cloaking device's power matrix was destabilizing, threatening to reveal their position to any nearby Romulan patrols. "Craig, we've got company." Zoe's voice cut through his concentration. "Two Romulan warboats on long-range sensors." Craig nodded, not taking his eyes off the system diagnostics. "Keep us on course. I just need a few more minutes." His mind raced, drawing on his knowledge of both human and Klingon technology. With a flash of insight, he rerouted power through auxiliary systems, using a technique he developed during late-night brainstorming sessions with Klingon engineers. The cloaking device stabilized, its readouts returning to normal. "We're secure," Craig announced, allowing himself a brief moment of relief. Their reprieve was short-lived. Lursa's voice rang out, sharp with urgency. "Mines ahead! Cloaked Romulan ordnance!" Craig's hands flew back to the controls, engaging evasive maneuvers. The bird of prey banked hard, narrowly avoiding the first mine. Craig's human intuition, honed by years of Starfleet training, melded seamlessly with the advanced Klingon sensor technology. He guided the ship through the minefield, each near miss causing his heart to skip a beat. As they emerged from the danger zone, Zoe spoke up. "That was too close. We need to alter our route." Craig nodded, studying the star charts. "Agreed. We'll have to go deeper into Romulan space than we planned." As they adjusted their course, the tension in the cabin remained palpable. Hours passed as they penetrated further into enemy territory, each moment fraught with the possibility of detection. Suddenly, an alert chimed on Craig's console. "I'm picking up an unusual energy signature," he said, frowning at the readings. "It's coming from a nearby planetoid." Zoe leaned over his shoulder, her brow furrowed. "That's not on any of our charts. What do you think it is?" Craig's curiosity was piqued. "I'm not sure, but it could be valuable intelligence. We should investigate." Lursa growled softly, her warrior's instincts on high alert. "It could also be a trap." "Agreed," Craig said, "but the potential payoff might be worth the risk. Let's take a closer look." As they approached the planetoid, the energy signature grew stronger. Craig's eyes widened as the ship's sensors revealed a hidden Romulan research facility, heavily guarded and emitting strange radiation patterns. "This wasn't part of our mission parameters," Zoe pointed out, her voice tinged with concern. Craig nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. "No, but it could be crucial intelligence. We need to find out what they're working on." After a brief but intense debate, they decided to split their efforts. Craig would use a personal cloaking device, another product of human-Klingon collaboration, to infiltrate the facility, while Zoe and Lursa maintained the ship's position and prepared for a swift extraction if needed. As Craig prepared to beam down, Zoe caught his arm. "Be careful down there," she said, her eyes betraying her worry. Lursa stepped forward, pressing a Klingon dagger into Craig's hand. "For luck," she growled, a rare smile crossing her face. Craig nodded, accepting the blade. "I'll be back before you know it," he assured them, stepping onto the transporter pad. In a shimmer of energy, Craig materialized on the planetoid's surface. He activated his personal cloaking device and moved towards the facility, his heart pounding with every step. The Romulan security patrols were numerous, but their pattern was predictable. Craig slipped past them, using every ounce of his Starfleet infiltration training. Inside the facility, Craig's eyes widened as he took in the sight of advanced weaponry and complex schematics. He overheard two Romulan scientists discussing a new type of quantum torpedo, capable of penetrating both Federation and Klingon shields. As he downloaded data from a nearby console, Craig's blood ran cold. The scientists mentioned a planned surprise attack on a key Klingon shipyard, scheduled to occur within days. Knowing time was of the essence, Craig signaled for emergency extraction. As he waited for the transporter beam, he heard a commotion in the hallway. His cloaking device was starting to fail. Just as a group of Romulan guards burst into the room, Craig felt the familiar tingle of the transporter. He materialized on the Bird of Prey's deck, gasping for breath. "We've got to move now," he shouted, rushing to the command chair. Zoe and Lursa sprang into action, disengaging the cloaking device just long enough to clear the planetoid's atmosphere before re-engaging it. "We've got company," Lursa growled, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Romulan warbird, closing fast. Craig's hands flew over the controls, pushing the hybrid ship to its limits. "Hold on," he warned, as he executed a series of evasive maneuvers that would have been impossible in a standard bird of prey. The Romulan ship opened fire, its disruptors lighting up the space around them. Zoe returned fire, her tactical brilliance evident in every well-placed shot. As they approached the Klingon border, more Romulan ships joined the pursuit. Craig's heart sank as he realized they were outgunned and outmaneuvered. Just when all seemed lost, a squadron of Klingon battlecruisers decloaked directly ahead of them. At their lead was Chancellor Martok's flagship, its weapons already blazing against the Romulan pursuers. "This is our chance," Craig shouted. Full impulse power to the engines. The Bird of Prey shot forward, slipping through the battle lines as Klingon and Romulan ships exchanged fire around them. As they crossed into Klingon space, Craig allowed himself a moment of relief. But he knew their mission was just getting started. The intelligence they'd gathered could mean the difference between victory and defeat for the Empire. As they set course for Kunis, Craig turned to Zoe and Lursa, his expression grim. "We've got a lot of work to do," he said, "and not much time to do it." He turned to face the main view screen, his expression a mixture of willpower and concern. "We need to get this information to Kilnus immediately." The Bird of Prey streaked through space, pushing its engines to the limit. As they approached the Klingon homeworld, Craig, Zoe, and Lursa prepared for the storm of activity that awaited them. They had no idea how profoundly their lives were about to change. Upon their return, they were immediately summoned to a high-level briefing with Chancellor Martok and the Klingon High Council. The room buzzed with tension as Craig presented their findings. "The Romulans have developed a new quantum torpedo," Craig explained, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "It's capable of penetrating both Federation and Klingon shields. They're planning a surprise attack on a key Klingon shipyard within days." The council erupted into a cacophony of shouts and growls. Chancellor Martok raised his hand, silencing the room. "Ambassador," he said, his one good eye fixed on Craig, "what do you propose we do?" Craig took a deep breath. "Chancellor, we need to act fast. I recommend we form a joint human-Klingon engineering team to adapt our shield technology. We can use the data we've gathered to create a new modulation system that can withstand these torpedoes." Zoe stepped forward. "Additionally, we should implement a multi-layer defense plan for the shipyard. We can combine traditional Klingon battle tactics with some unconventional human strategies." Lursa nodded in agreement. "We'll need to deploy a network of cloaked sensor buoys for early warning, and position our battle cruisers strategically once they're equipped with the new shields." Chancellor Martok considered their words, then nodded grimly. "Make it so. You three will oversee these preparations. The fate of the Empire may rest on your success." Over the next several days, Craig, Zoe, and Lursa threw themselves into their work. Craig established the engineering team, working tirelessly to adapt the shield technology. He pushed himself to the limit, often working through the night, fueled by a potent mix of Klingon blood wine and human persistence. Meanwhile, Zoe and Lursa coordinated the defense of the shipyard. They spent hours in the war room, poring over tactical displays and arguing strategies. Their plan began to take shape, a complex web of defenses that would give the Romulans more than they bargained for. As the deadline for the expected Romulan attack drew near, Chancellor Martok called for a full mobilization of the Klingon fleet. The skies of Quinoas filled with the silhouettes of warships, a sight not seen since the dark days of the Dominion War. In recognition of their efforts, Craig, Zoe, and Lursa were appointed as special advisors to the High Council. It was an honor that came with immense responsibility, and the weight of it pressed heavily on their shoulders. Just as they thought they had a handle on the situation, a new challenge emerged. A group of human colonists on a nearby Klingon world requested immediate evacuation to Federation space, fearing for their safety in the event of a Romulan invasion. Craig paced the floor of their shared quarters, his mind racing. "We can't let this become a diplomatic incident," he muttered. "Not now, when we need unity more than ever." Zoe looked up from the tactical display she'd been studying. "What if we turn this into an opportunity instead of a problem?" Craig stopped pacing, his interest piqued. "What do you have in mind?" "A joint human-Klingon defense force," Zoe explained, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "We could use it to protect the colony and showcase the strength of our partnership." Lursa grinned, baring her teeth. "A chance to prove the effectiveness of our combined combat techniques." Craig nodded, his enthusiasm growing. "And we could equip them with our new hybrid technologies." "It's perfect." They presented the idea to Chancellor Martok, who approved it with a hearty laugh. "You continue to surprise me, Ambassador," he said, clapping Craig on the shoulder. "Make it happen." As Craig set about implementing the new defense force, Zoe and Lursa found themselves facing an unexpected challenge. The constant pressure and increased responsibilities were taking a toll on their relationship with Craig. One night, after a particularly grueling day of preparations, Zoe confronted the issue head-on. "We need to talk," she said, her voice soft but firm. Craig looked up from his work, concern etched on his face. "What's wrong?" Lursa stepped forward, standing beside Zoe. "We've been so focused on our duties, we've neglected what's truly important." Craig's expression softened as understanding dawned. "You're right," he said, setting aside his data PADD. "We can't let this crisis tear us apart. We're stronger together." After a long discussion, they came to a decision. They would undergo a traditional Klingon bonding ritual, adapted to include elements of human marriage customs. It would be their way of reaffirming their commitment to each other amidst the chaos of war preparations. The ceremony was held in secret, attended only by a few trusted friends. As they exchanged vows and shared a cup of blood wine, Craig felt a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Their moment of personal connection was short-lived, however. As they returned to their duties, long-range sensors detected an unusual energy signature approaching from deep space, beyond the borders of both the Romulan and Klingon empires. Craig frowned as he studied the readings. "This isn't like anything I've seen before," he muttered, his mind already racing with possibilities. As he assembled a team to investigate the anomaly, reports came in of Romulan ships decloaking near the Klingon border. The long-anticipated attack appeared to be beginning. Craig exchanged glances with Zoe and Lursa, their earlier vows fresh in their minds. They knew that the coming hours would test them like never before. With the Romulan threat looming and an unknown force approaching, they stood on the precipice of a conflict that could reshape the Alpha Quadrant. As alarms blared throughout the Klingon capital, Craig took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. "Let's get to work," he said, his voice filled with quiet purpose. Zoe and Lursa nodded, falling into step beside him as they headed towards the war room, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The war room erupted into a flurry of activity as alarms blared throughout the Klingon capital. Craig, Zoe, and Lursa exchanged determined glances before springing into action. They had prepared for this moment, and now it was time to put their plans to the test. "Activate the sensor buoy network," Craig ordered, his fingers flying over the control panel. "Let's see what we're dealing with." A holographic display materialized in the center of the room, showing the position of the approaching Romulan warboats. Lursa growled softly as she studied the formation. "They're moving into attack position near the shipyard." Zoe's eyes narrowed as she assessed the tactical situation. "Just as we predicted. Implement defense pattern Omega-3. As the orders were relayed, the Klingon battle cruisers equipped with the new shield technology moved into position. Craig watched with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension as the first wave of Romulan warboats decloaked near the shipyard. "Here they come," he muttered, his hand instinctively reaching for Zoe and Lursa. The space around the shipyard lit up with the brilliant flashes of quantum torpedoes. Craig held his breath as the new weapons impacted the Klingon ship's shields. To his relief, the modified shield technology held, the ships withstanding the assault with minimal damage. "It worked!" Zoe exclaimed, a rare smile breaking across her face. Lursa bared her teeth in a fierce grin. "Now it's our turn. Execute attack pattern Delta 7. The defending Klingon fleet sprang into action, executing a series of complex maneuvers that left the Romulan attackers struggling to keep up. Craig watched with pride as the tactics he, Zoe, and Lursa had developed played out before his eyes. As the battle raged, a new alert sounded. Craig frowned as he studied the readings. The unknown energy signature. It's entered Klingon space. The trio exchanged worried glances. They couldn't afford to divide their attention, but they couldn't ignore this potential new threat either. "I'm receiving a transmission," Zoe reported, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's a distress signal." The message played throughout the war room, revealing the plight of the Zareth, a species fleeing from a catastrophe in their home system. Their massive colony ships carried thousands of refugees, now caught on the fringes of a war zone. Craig's mind raced as he weighed their options. The Klingon fleet was fully engaged with the Romulan attack, but he couldn't bring himself to abandon those in need. "We need to help them," he said firmly, turning to face Zoe and Lursa. "It's the right thing to do." Lursa nodded, her expression solemn. "A warrior's duty is not only to fight, but to protect the weak." "Agreed," Zoe added, "but we'll be spreading ourselves thin. We need to be smart about this." Craig took a deep breath and opened a channel to the fleet. "This is Ambassador Craig. I'm ordering a portion of our forces to assist the Zareth refugee ships. All vessels in Sector 7 break off and provide escort." The order was met with a moment of stunned silence, followed by a chorus of acknowledgments. Not everyone agreed with the decision, but the fleet followed their orders. As a group of Klingon ships moved to intercept the Zareth vessels, the Romulans seized the opportunity to launch a bold assault on the shipyard itself. Craig gritted his teeth as he watched the enemy ship slip through the weakened defensive line. "We can't let them destroy the shipyard," Lursa growled, her hands clenching into fists. Zoe's eyes blazed with drive. "Then we'll stop them ourselves." To the flagship. The trio raced to the docking bay, boarding the heavily modified bird of prey that had served them so well. Within moments, they were soaring through space, weaving through debris and weapons fire as they made their way to the heart of the battle. Craig's hands danced over the controls, pushing the hybrid ship to its limits. Zoe manned the weapons station, her targeting precision picking off Romulan fighters with surgical accuracy. Lursa coordinated with the rest of the fleet, her fierce commands rallying the Klingon warriors. As they approached the lead Romulan warbird, Craig executed a series of maneuvers that would have been impossible in a standard ship. The hybrid technology allowed them to practically dance around the enemy vessel, staying just out of reach of its weapons while hammering it with their own. "Their shields are weakening," Zoe reported, her voice tight with concentration. "One more pass should do it." Before they could make their final attack run, a new energy signature appeared on their sensors. The Zareth ships had arrived, their massive forms dwarfing even the largest Klingon vessels. "We're receiving a transmission from the Zareth flagship," Lursa announced, surprise evident in her voice. A deep, resonant voice filled the bridge. "Klingon allies, we offer our assistance. Our ships possess defensive capabilities that may turn the tide of this battle." Craig's mind raced with possibilities. "Can you extend your defenses to cover our fleet?" "We can do more than that," the Zareth representative replied. "With your permission, we can create an energy shield that will encompass the entire battlefield." Craig exchanged quick glances with Zoe and Lursa, seeing his own excitement mirrored in their eyes. "Do it," he ordered. Within moments, a shimmering field of energy began to spread from the Zareth ships, enveloping the Klingon fleet and the shipyard. The Romulan weapons fire splashed harmlessly against this new defense, their quantum torpedoes rendered ineffective. Realization dawned on the Romulan commander's face as it appeared on the console. Their plan had failed spectacularly. With a look of bitter defeat, he gave the order to retreat. As the Romulan ships cloaked and withdrew, cheers erupted across the Klingon fleet. Craig slumped back in his chair, exhaustion and relief washing over him in equal measure. Zoe and Lursa moved to his side, their hands resting on his shoulders in a gesture of unity and support. Their victory was sweet, but Craig knew that their challenges were just getting started. As the Zareth ships moved closer, their vast hulls filling the view screen, he straightened in his chair. The battle was won, but a new chapter in Klingon history was just beginning. With Zoe and Lursa by his side, Craig prepared to face whatever came next. Next, the shimmering energy field of the Zareth ships gradually dissipated, revealing the battle-scarred expanse of space around them. Craig took a deep breath, his mind already racing with the implications of this unexpected alliance. "We need to get back to the surface," he said, turning to Zoe and Lursa. "The High Council will want a full report on what just happened." As their bird of prey descended through Kunosa's atmosphere, Craig couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger challenge. The Zareth ships loomed in orbit, a constant reminder of the diplomatic tightrope they now walked. No sooner had they landed than they were summoned to an emergency session of the High Council. The great hall buzzed with tension as Craig, Zoe, and Lursa took their places before the assembled Klingon leadership. Chancellor Martok's voice boomed across the chamber. "Ambassador, explain the situation. Who are these Zareth, and why have you brought them into the heart of our territory?" Craig stepped forward, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Chancellor, honored members of the Council, the Zareth are refugees fleeing a catastrophe in their home system. They arrived at the height of the Romulan attack, and their advanced defensive technology turned the tide of battle in our favor." A low murmur rippled through the crowd. Craig pressed on, seizing the moment. "I propose we establish a joint Klingon-Zareth colony on a nearby uninhabited planet. This would not only provide a home for the refugees, but also allow us to benefit from their technological expertise." The chamber erupted into fierce debate. Conservative council members leapt to their feet, shouting objections. "We cannot allow aliens to settle within our borders." One bellowed, pounding his fist on the table. Zoe stepped forward, her eyes blazing with intensity. "The Zareth technology has already proven its worth in battle. Imagine what we could achieve with further collaboration." Lursa nodded, adding her voice to the argument. Our recent victory over the Romulans is proof of the strength that comes from cultural exchange. We would be fools to turn away such powerful allies." The debate raged for hours, with arguments flying back and forth across the chamber. Craig watched Chancellor Martok closely, trying to gauge his reaction. Finally, the Chancellor raised his hand for silence. "I have heard enough," Martok declared, his voice cutting through the din. "Ambassador Craig's plan has merit. We will proceed with the joint colony project." The decision sent shockwaves through the Empire. Within days, Craig found himself leading a survey team to select a suitable planet for the new colony. They settled on a Class M world with a climate similar to Kionoas, rich in natural resources and untouched by sentient life. Craig named it New Kionoas, a symbol of the future he envisioned. As construction began, Craig threw himself into the work, overseeing the integration of Klingon, human, and Zarath building techniques. The result was a truly unique settlement, blending the best aspects of each culture into something entirely new. But not everyone shared Craig's enthusiasm for the project. A group of Klingon settlers, led by a fiery warrior named Korg, began staging protests against the Zarath presence. Craig watched with growing concern as tensions escalated. One evening, as he inspected a newly completed residential block, Craig heard a commotion nearby. He rounded a corner to find Korg and his followers confronting a group of Zarath workers. "This is Klingon soil," Korg shouted, his hand on his DK tog. "You have no right to be here." Craig stepped between them, his hands raised. "Stand down, Korg. These people are here at the invitation of the High Council." Korg's eyes narrowed. "The Council may have been fooled by your honeyed words, Ambassador, but we see the truth. These aliens will dilute our culture, weaken our warrior spirit." "You're wrong," Craig countered, keeping his voice level. "The Zarath have already proven their worth as allies. This colony is a chance for both our peoples to grow stronger together." The standoff lasted for several tense moments before Korg and his followers finally backed down. As they walked away, Craig knew this was nowhere near the end. He would need to find a way to address their concerns while staying true to the colony's mission. Meanwhile, Zoe had thrown herself into the task of integrating Zarath defensive technology with Klingon weapon systems. She established a training program that brought Klingon and Zarath engineers together, fostering an environment of mutual learning and respect. In a cavernous laboratory at the heart of the colony, Zoe stood before a mixed group of Klingon and Zarath scientists. "Today, we begin work on a new type of photon torpedo," she announced, activating a holographic display. "By combining Klingon weapons technology with Zarath energy manipulation techniques, we aim to create a weapon with unprecedented range and power." The team set to work, and over the following weeks, Zoe watched with pride as Klingon and Zarath engineers worked side by side, overcoming language barriers and cultural differences in pursuit of a common goal. Lursa, for her part, found herself embroiled in the complex task of creating a legal framework for the new colony. She spent long hours in negotiation with Zarath leaders, working to develop a hybrid system of governance that would satisfy both species. The challenge, Lursa explained to a joint committee of Klingon and Zarath representatives, is to honor the warrior traditions of the Klingon people while respecting the more cooperative nature of Zarath society. It was a delicate balancing act. More than once, Lursa found herself mediating heated debates as certain Klingon practices clashed with Zarath sensibilities. But slowly, progress was made. As the colony took shape, Craig received word that the Federation was sending a delegation to observe the project. His former commanding officer, Admiral Taylor, would be leading the group. The news sent a jolt of anxiety through Craig. He knew that the arrival of Federation representatives would add yet another layer of complexity to an already volatile situation. Craig stood at the colony's main landing pad, flanked by Zoe and Lursa as the Federation shuttle touched down. As Admiral Taylor emerged, Craig felt the weight of his divided loyalties more keenly than ever. He was a human who had found a home among Klingon, now building a future with an entirely new species. Where did his true allegiance lie? The Admiral approached, a guarded smile on his face. "Ambassador Craig," he said, extending his hand. "It's been a long time." Craig shook the offered hand, acutely aware of the Klingon in Zarth eyes, watching their every move. "Welcome to New Klingon's Admiral," he replied, gesturing towards the sprawling colony behind him. "We have quite a story to tell you." As Craig led the Federation delegation on a tour of the colony, he could feel the undercurrents of tension rippling through the settlement. Some saw the Federation presence as an opportunity for greater cooperation, while others viewed it as a threat to Klingon independence. That night, as Craig pored over reports in his office, a proximity alert sounded. He looked up to see Zoe and Lursa entering, their faces etched with concern. "We need to talk," Zoe said, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Craig leaned back in his chair, a sense of foreboding settling over him. "What's wrong?" Lursa stepped forward, her eyes searching his face. "You've been distant, distracted. What aren't you telling us?" Craig hesitated, the weight of his recent discovery pressing down on him. He knew he would have to make a decision soon, one that could change everything they had worked for. But as he looked at the two women who had become his partners in every sense of the word, he realized that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. "You're right," he said finally, standing up. "There's something I need to show you. But first, we need to go for a little trip." As they made their way to a waiting shuttle, Craig's mind raced with the implications of what he was about to reveal. The artifacts he had discovered could upend the delicate balance they had worked so hard to achieve. But as the shuttle lifted off, heading towards a remote area where he had made his startling find, Craig knew that the time for secrets was over. Whatever came next, they would face it as one, a united front. As the shuttle touched down in a remote area of New Klingon, Craig led Zoe and Lursa to a small, nondescript building. "What I'm about to show you could change everything," Craig said, his voice low as he entered a security code. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a dimly lit chamber filled with strange objects. Zoe's eyes widened as she took in the sight. "Are these artifacts?" Craig nodded, gesturing to the alien technology scattered around the room. "I discovered them during a routine geological survey. They're unlike anything I've ever seen before." Lursa ran her hand over a smooth, metallic surface. "This technology, it's far beyond even the Zareth. Who created these?" "I don't know," Craig admitted. "But I do know we can't keep this secret any longer. We need to inform Martok, the Zareth leadership, and Admiral Taylor." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity, as Craig arranged for a meeting of the colony's key stakeholders. The newly constructed assembly hall buzzed with tension as representatives from the Klingon Empire, the Zareth, and the Federation gathered. Craig stood at the center of the room, acutely aware of the weight of the moment. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. "I've called this meeting to discuss a discovery of utmost importance." As Craig presented the artifacts and explained their potential significance, he could see the reactions rippling through the crowd. Chancellor Martok leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with interest. The Zareth leaders exchanged worried glances, while Admiral Taylor's face remained impassive. "These artifacts represent a level of technology far beyond our current capabilities," Craig explained. "Their potential applications could revolutionize our understanding of science and the universe itself." Chancellor Martok was the first to speak. "This is a great opportunity for the Klingon Empire," he declared, pounding his fist on the table. "We must claim this technology for ourselves." The Zareth representative, a tall, slender being named Zexera, raised a hand in protest. "We cannot simply take what does not belong to us. These are the remnants of an ancient civilization. We must proceed with caution and respect. Admiral Taylor cleared his throat. The Federation proposes a joint scientific expedition to study these artifacts. We have experience in handling first contact situations and preserving cultural heritage. As the debate intensified, Craig could hear a commotion outside the assembly hall. He gestured to Zoe, who slipped out to investigate. She returned moments later, her face grim. "It's Korg," she reported. "He's gathered a crowd of protesters. They're demanding Klingon control over the artifact site and the expulsion of all non-Klingon from New Konoes." Craig's mind raced as he considered the volatile situation. He knew he had to act quickly to prevent violence from erupting. Taking a deep breath, he addressed the assembled leaders once more. "I propose a compromise," he said, his voice cutting through the heated discussions. "We form a tripartite commission with equal representation from Klingon, Zareth, and Federation scientists. This commission will oversee the study and potential utilization of the artifacts." The room fell silent as the leaders considered his proposal. Craig could see the calculations running behind their eyes, weighing the potential benefits against their individual agendas. "To demonstrate the potential of cooperation," Craig continued, seizing the moment, "I suggest we conduct an immediate practical demonstration. A team composed of members from all three groups will explore one of the excavation sites together." Chancellor Martok nodded slowly. "A reasonable suggestion. Let us see what this cooperation can achieve." Within hours, Craig found himself leading a diverse team to one of the artifact sites. Klingon warriors stood shoulder to shoulder with Zareth engineers and Federation scientists, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. As they approached the sealed chamber, Craig turned to address the group. "Each of us brings unique skills and knowledge to this task. By working together, we can unlock secrets that none of us could discover alone." The team set to work, combining Klingon strength, Zareth technological finesse, and Federation scientific analysis. As they carefully removed layers of ancient protection, a sense of excitement began to build. Suddenly, a Zareth engineer called out, "I'm detecting an energy signature. It's unlike anything in our databases." With painstaking care, the team uncovered a cache of glowing crystalline structures. As they connected the final circuits, the crystals pulsed with brilliant light, sending a wave of energy through the chamber. "Incredible," breathed a Federation scientist, scanning the devices. "These energy cells are orders of magnitude more powerful than our most advanced power sources." Chancellor Martok's eyes gleamed as he observed the demonstration. With such power at our disposal, the Empire could become truly invincible. Craig stepped forward, addressing the gathered leaders. "This is just a glimpse of what we can achieve together. Imagine what other wonders we might uncover if we pool our resources and knowledge." The success of the demonstration had a profound impact on the assembled leaders. Chancellor Martok, his warrior's pride temporarily set aside, nodded in agreement. "Very well, Ambassador. Your tripartite commission has my support." The Zareth leadership, seeing the potential for advancing their own technology, also gave their endorsement. Admiral Taylor, recognizing the diplomatic opportunity, pledged Federation support for the joint venture. As the meeting concluded, Craig felt a sense of relief wash over him. The immediate crisis had been averted, but he knew that challenges still lay ahead. The protests outside served as a stark reminder of the divisions that remained within the colony. Turning to Zoe and Lursa, Craig squared his shoulders. "We've made progress," he said, "but our work is not nearly finished. We need to address the concerns of Korg and his followers if we want this colony to truly succeed." Lursa nodded, her mind already working on potential solutions. "We could organize public forums, give them a chance to voice their grievances, and participate in shaping the colony's future." "Good idea," Craig agreed. And we'll need to establish some kind of cultural preservation committee to ensure Klingon traditions remain a central part of life here. As they walked out of the assembly hall, Craig could see the crowd of protesters beginning to disperse. The news of the successful artifact retrieval had spread quickly, tempering some of the anger. But he knew that winning over the traditionalists would be a long and delicate process. Looking out over the sprawling colony, with its mix of Klingon, Zareth, and Federation architecture, Craig felt a renewed sense of purpose. New Konoha stood as a testament to what could be achieved when different cultures came together. Now, with the discovery of the artifacts, they faced both incredible opportunities and daunting challenges. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the colony, Craig turned to Zoe and Lursa. We should prepare for an influx of new arrivals. Once word of this discovery spreads, scientists and adventurers from across the quadrant will be clamoring to join our efforts. Zoe grinned, a spark of excitement in her eyes. I'll start working on expanding our defense capabilities. We'll need a security force that can handle whatever the universe throws at us. Lursa nodded, her mind already racing with ideas. And I'll focus on adapting our legal framework to accommodate a more diverse population. We'll need to strike a balance between respecting individual cultures and maintaining order. As they walked back to their shared quarters, Craig couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the brink of something momentous. The artifacts hidden beneath New Konoha held secrets that could reshape the balance of power in the quadrant. But more than that, they represented an opportunity to forge a new kind of society, one built on cooperation and mutual understanding. The challenges ahead were daunting, but as Craig looked at Zoe and Lursa, he felt a surge of confidence. Together, they had already accomplished the impossible. Whatever the future held, they would face it as one, a united front against whatever challenges lay ahead. As they entered their shared quarters, an alarm blared through the colony's communication system. Craig's communicator buzzed urgently, displaying a message from the Geological Survey team. "We need to get to the artifact site immediately," Craig said, his voice tense. "There's been some kind of activation." Without hesitation, Zoe and Lursa followed Craig as they rushed to a waiting shuttle. The short flight to the excavation site was filled with tense silence, broken only by the occasional update from the ground team. As they approached, Craig could see a crowd gathering near the entrance to the underground complex. Klingon warriors stood shoulder to shoulder with Zareth engineers and Federation scientists, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "What's the situation?" Craig asked as they disembarked. A Federation scientist approached, her face pale. "The artifacts we uncovered earlier. They've started emitting some kind of energy signature. We can't make heads or tails of it, but it's causing minor seismic disturbances throughout the area." Craig exchanged glances with Zoe and Lursa. They knew they had to act fast to prevent a potential catastrophe. "We're going in," Craig announced, grabbing a tricorder and heading towards the entrance. Zoe and Lursa fell in step behind him, their years of working together evident in their synchronized movements. As they descended into the complex, the air grew thick with an otherworldly energy. The walls pulsed with an eerie blue light, and a low hum reverberated through the chamber. "Look at these symbols," Craig said, pointing to a series of glowing glyphs on a nearby console. "They seem to be reacting to the energy surge." Zoe stepped forward, her Klingon strength allowing her to manipulate a series of heavy controls. "These feel like they're meant to be moved in a specific sequence," she observed. Lursa's eyes darted across the room, taking in the layout and the patterns of the pulsing lights. "I think I see a pattern," she said. "Craig, can you make sense of those symbols?" Craig studied the glyphs intently, his human intuition kicking in. "I think. Yes, I see it now. It's a lock, a safeguard. We need to deactivate it in the right order." Working in perfect harmony, the trio began the delicate process of deactivation. Craig deciphered the symbols, calling out instructions to Zoe, who used her strength to manipulate the ancient controls. Lursa coordinated their efforts, her strategic mind helping them sequence the correct series of actions. As they worked, the energy in the room intensified. Sweat beaded on their foreheads, and the ground beneath their feet trembled ominously. "Almost there," Craig muttered, his fingers flying over the alien console. Just one more sequence. With a final push from Zoe and a nod from Lursa, Craig input the last command. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a deep, resonant tone, the energy dissipated, and the room fell silent. They barely had time to catch their breath before a hidden mechanism whirred to life. A section of the wall slid away, revealing a vast chamber filled with shimmering holographic displays. "By Collis," Zoe breathed, her eyes wide with awe. Craig stepped forward, his tricorder beeping frantically. It's a database," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "A repository of knowledge from the civilization that built this place." As they explored the newly revealed chamber, the magnitude of their discovery began to sink in. The database contained information on sciences far beyond their current understanding, technologies that could revolutionize life throughout the quadrant. "We need to secure this site immediately," Lursa said, her mind already racing with the implications. "And we need to inform the colony leadership." Craig nodded, tapping his communicator. "Craig to colony control. The situation at the artifact site is under control, but we're going to need a full security detail and a team of our best scientists down here immediately." As they emerged from the complex, they found the colony in a state of controlled chaos. The seismic activity caused by the device's activation had sent ripples of panic through the population. Craig quickly organized a team to secure the underground facility and began the process of translating and analyzing the newly discovered data. Zoe took charge of crowd control, working with the colony's security forces to maintain order and disseminate accurate information. Within hours, news of their discovery had spread beyond New QNOS. Craig's communicator buzzed constantly with incoming messages from the Klingon High Council, Zareth leadership, and Federation authorities. "Ambassador," a voice crackled through the comm system. It was Chancellor Martok. "I'm en route to New QNOS with a delegation. The High Council demands a full report on this discovery." Before Craig could respond, another message came through. "This is Admiral Taylor of Starfleet. We're dispatching a science vessel to assist with the analysis of the alien technology." Craig exchanged looks with Zoe and Lursa. They knew that the delicate balance they had worked so hard to achieve on New QNOS was about to be tested like never before. "We need to prepare for their arrival," Craig said, his mind already formulating a plan. "Zoe, I need you to coordinate with our security teams. Set up a perimeter around the artifact site and implement enhanced scanning protocols for all incoming ships." Zoe nodded, her expression determined. "I'll work with the Klingon Defense Forces and the Zareth engineers. We'll create an impenetrable defense grid around the planet." "Lursa," Craig continued, "we're going to need a legal framework for handling this discovery. Can you draft a preliminary agreement outlining the rights and responsibilities of each participating species?" Lursa's eyes gleamed with the challenge. "I'll get right on it. We'll need to ensure fair access to the technology while protecting the interests of New QNOS." As his partners set off to their tasks, Craig took a moment to gaze out over the colony. The horizon was dotted with a mix of Klingon, Zareth, and Federation architecture, a testament to what they had already achieved. Now, with this new discovery, they stood on the brink of something even greater. But as he watched a group of protesters gathering in the distance, led by the ever-present Korg, Craig knew that the road ahead would not be easy. The ancient knowledge they had uncovered had the potential to unite their disparate peoples, or to tear them apart. With a deep breath, Craig squared his shoulders and headed towards the colony's main administrative building. He had a summit to organize, and the fate of not just New QNOS, but potentially the entire quadrant, hung in the balance. Balance hung in the air. Craig's communicator suddenly erupted with urgent alerts. The colony's long-range sensors had detected an unknown fleet approaching New Konoes at high speed. "We've got incoming," Craig announced, his voice cutting through the tense atmosphere. "Multiple vessels of unknown origin." Zoe's eyes narrowed as she accessed the sensor data on her own device. "Their design, it's unlike anything in our database." Without hesitation, the trio sprang into action. Craig tapped his communicator, his voice steady as he issued a colony-wide alert. "All citizens, this is Ambassador Craig. We are implementing emergency protocols. Please proceed to your designated shelters immediately." Lursa was already coordinating with the security teams, her fingers flying over a nearby console. "I'm initiating evacuation procedures for the summit delegates. We need to get them to the secure bunkers." As the colony buzzed with activity, Craig, Zoe, and Lursa made their way to the central command center. The room was a hive of activity, with screens displaying real-time data from the planetary defense grid. "Activate the hybrid shield technology," Craig ordered, his eyes fixed on the main view screen. "Let's see what this combined Klingon, Zareth, and Federation system can do." Zoe nodded, her hands moving swiftly over the controls. The air outside shimmered as the massive shield enveloped the planet, a testament to the collaboration between the three species. As the unknown ships entered orbit, Craig leaned forward, studying their design. "Hold your fire," he commanded the defense forces. "But stay alert. We don't know their intentions." Lursa initiated a series of complex sensor scans, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Craig, look at this," she said, pointing to a data stream. "These ships, their energy signatures are similar to the technology we found in the underground complex." Craig's eyes widened as he processed the information. "Could it be?" he muttered, his mind racing with possibilities. Before he could complete the thought, the lead ship broadcast a message. It echoed through the command center in multiple languages, Klingon, Zareth, and Federation Standard. "Greetings, inhabitants of this world. We are the progenitors, returned to reclaim our legacy. We request permission to land and engage in peaceful dialogue." The command center fell silent, the weight of this revelation settling over everyone present. Craig exchanged glances with Zoe and Lursa, seeing his own mix of excitement and apprehension mirrored in their eyes. "We need to convene an emergency meeting," Craig said, already reaching for his communicator. "Get me Chancellor Martok, the Zareth leadership, and Admiral Taylor. Now." Within minutes, the colony's leaders were gathered in a secure conference room. The debate was heated, with voices raised and fists pounding on tables. "We cannot trust these so-called progenitors," Martok growled, his hand instinctively reaching for his bat'leth. "It could be a trick, a ploy to catch us off guard." Admiral Taylor countered, "But think of the potential knowledge we could gain. If they truly are the creators of the technology we've discovered, this could revolutionize our understanding of the universe." The Zareth representative, a tall, willowy being named Zeltor, raised a hand for silence. "We must approach this with caution, but also with an open mind. Our combined strength has brought us this far. Together, we can face whatever these progenitors bring." After hours of intense discussion, a consensus was reached. They would allow a small delegation to land, under heavy security. Craig volunteered to lead the welcoming committee, unsurprised when Zoe and Lursa immediately stepped forward to join him. As they made their way to the designated landing area, Craig couldn't help but feel a mix of anticipation and trepidation. The sleek, silver ship that descended from the progenitor fleet was unlike anything he had ever seen, its surface seeming to shimmer and shift in the planet's light. The ship's hatch opened with a soft hiss, and Craig found himself face to face with beings that defied easy description. Tall and luminescent, the progenitors moved with a fluid grace that spoke of both organic life and advanced technology. The lead progenitor stepped forward, its form seeming to glow from within. "I am Zalthara," it said, its voice melodious and multi-toned. "We have returned to reclaim our lost knowledge and to assess the development of the younger races." Craig straightened his shoulders, acutely aware of the weight of this moment. "I am Ambassador Craig," he replied, gesturing to his companions. "On behalf of the colony of New Kus, I welcome you. We have much to discuss." As Craig began to outline the colony's history and achievements, he could sense the intensity of Zalthara's gaze. The progenitor seemed to be evaluating not just his words, but the very essence of their multi-species collaboration. "Fascinating," Zalthara said when Craig had finished. "Your cooperation is unexpected but promising. Perhaps you are ready for the next step in your evolution." The progenitor's words sent a ripple of excitement and uncertainty through the gathered representatives. Craig exchanged glances with Zoe and Lursa, knowing that whatever came next would reshape not just New Konoes, but potentially the entire quadrant. Zalthara's next words confirmed their suspicions. "We propose a cultural exchange program," the progenitor announced. "A sharing of knowledge between our kind and yours." The implications of this offer were staggering. Craig's mind raced with the possibilities and the potential dangers. He knew that careful consideration would be needed to navigate this new chapter in their colony's history. "We are honored by your offer," Craig replied carefully. "However, such an exchange would have far-reaching consequences. We would need to carefully evaluate the implications before making any decisions." Zalthara nodded, a gesture that seemed both alien and familiar. "Of course, we expected nothing less from beings of your potential. Take the time you need to consider our proposal. We await your response." As the progenitors returned to their ship, Craig turned to Zoe and Lursa. The challenges ahead were clear in their expressions. Challenges that would test not just their leadership, but the very foundations of the society they had built on New Konoes. "We have work to do," Craig said, his voice filled with dedication. "Let's get started." Started. We need to prepare for these trials while maintaining the stability of our colony. As they left the landing area, the ground beneath their feet trembled slightly. Craig frowned, tapping his communicator. "Engineering report. What's causing these tremors?" "Ambassador, we've detected increased seismic activity across the planet," a voice crackled through. "It seems to be related to the activation of the progenitor technology." Craig exchanged worried glances with Zoe and Lursa. "We need to address this immediately. Let's head to the underground complex." Upon reaching the ancient facility, they discovered a network of weather control devices, previously dormant but now humming with energy. Craig studied the alien interfaces, his mind racing. These could be the key to stabilizing our environment, he mused. "Zoe, can you work with the engineering team to integrate these systems into our existing infrastructure?" Zoe nodded, her fingers already dancing across a control panel. "I'm on it. With these devices, we might be able to restore the planet's climate to optimal conditions." As Zoe coordinated the activation of the weather control network, Craig and Lursa focused on preparing for the progenitor trials. They pored over the data from the underground complex, piecing together fragments of ancient knowledge. Days turned into weeks as they worked tirelessly. Gradually, the planet's volatile weather patterns began to stabilize. Storms that had once raged for days now dissipated quickly, and the harsh temperature fluctuations evened out. The success of the climate stabilization project boosted morale throughout the colony. Craig felt a surge of confidence as he prepared for the first trial. On the day of the intellect trial, Craig entered a specially constructed arena. The air hummed with anticipation as delegates from various species watched from the stands. Zalthara stood at the center, her luminescent form radiating an aura of ancient wisdom. "Ambassador Craig," Zalthara's multi-tone voice resonated through the arena. "Are you prepared to face the challenges that await you?" Craig nodded, his posture straight and determined. I am. The trial began with a series of holographic projections materializing around Craig. Complex equations and puzzles hung in the air, each more intricate than the last. Craig's mind raced as he analyzed the problems, drawing on his unique blend of knowledge. He combined human intuition with Klingon tactical thinking and Zarath analytical methods. As he solved each puzzle, the holograms shifted and evolved, presenting new challenges. Hours passed, and sweat beaded on Craig's brow. Finally, he input the solution to the last equation. The holograms flickered and vanished, leaving the arena in silence. Zalthara's form seemed to pulse with approval. Impressive, Ambassador. Your approach demonstrates the potential of combining multiple perspectives. With the intellect trial behind him, Craig faced his next challenge, the test of physical prowess. Zoe designed an intense training regimen, merging Klingon combat techniques with human agility exercises. Lursa contributed strategic elements from Zarath martial arts. For weeks, Craig pushed his body to its limits. He sparred with Klingon warriors, navigated Zarath obstacle courses, and honed his reflexes through grueling human endurance tests. When the day of the physical trial arrived, Craig stood before a massive, shape-shifting obstacle course filled with progenitor technology. As he began the challenge, the course came alive. Platforms shifted beneath his feet, energy barriers appeared and disappeared, and holographic opponents materialized to test his combat skills. Craig leapt, rolled, and fought his way through the course. He used Klingon strength to overpower physical barriers, Zarath agility to navigate shifting terrain, and human adaptability to outmaneuver holographic foes. As he approached the finish line, a final challenge arose. A chasm opened before him, too wide to jump. Craig spotted a series of floating energy nodes. Drawing on his combined training, he leapt from node to node, using precise timing and calculated risk to cross the gap. Landing on the other side, Craig touched the finish marker. The obstacle course powered down, and applause erupted from the watching crowd. Even Zalthara seemed impressed by his performance. With 2 trials complete, Craig prepared for the final and perhaps most daunting challenge, the test of moral character. He entered a simulation chamber, unsure of what to expect. The first scenario materialized around him. Craig found himself mediating a dispute between Klingon colonists and Zarath engineers over the allocation of resources. As he navigated the complex web of cultural expectations and practical needs, more scenarios appeared. Each dilemma forced Craig to balance the interests of different species and factions. He drew on his experiences as an ambassador, seeking solutions that respected diverse perspectives while advancing the greater good. As the final scenario faded away, Craig emerged from the simulation chamber. The assembled delegates murmured among themselves, discussing his decisions. Zalthara approached, her form shimmering with an intensity Craig hadn't seen before. You have completed the trials, Ambassador Craig. Your performance has demonstrated not only individual capability, but the strength that comes from true cooperation between species. She gestured, and a beam of energy connected her to the colony's central computer. As promised, we shall share our knowledge with your people. As data began to flow into the colony's systems, Craig felt a sense of triumph. But his elation was short-lived. The ground beneath them shuddered violently, and alarms blared throughout the complex. Ambassador, Zoe's voice crackled through his communicator. The data transfer has triggered a reaction in the planet's core. We're detecting massive energy fluctuations. Craig's mind raced as he assessed the situation. We need to stabilize the core immediately. Zoe, Lursa, meet me at the entrance to the underground complex. We're going in. As tremors shook the colony, Craig led his team into the depths of New Konoas, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them in the ancient progenitor machinery. Facility. The ancient corridors hummed with energy as Craig Zoe, and Lursa navigated the labyrinthine structure. Holographic displays flickered to life, revealing a network of interconnected systems that span the planet's core. "These readings are off the charts," Zoe muttered, her eyes darting across her datapad. "The energy fluctuations are intensifying. We need to find the main control room." As they rounded a corner, they encountered a massive door adorned with intricate progenitor glyphs. Craig placed his hand on the surface, and to their surprise, it slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, they found a vast chamber filled with pulsing crystals and hovering interfaces. At the center stood a towering pillar of light, its energy crackling and arcing outward. "That must be the core regulator," Lursa said, her voice tinged with awe. "But how do we stabilize it?" Craig approached the nearest interface, his fingers hovering over the alien controls. Drawing on the knowledge gained from the trials, he began to decipher the complex system. "Zoe, I need you to reroute power from the secondary nodes," he called out. "Lursa, monitor the energy output and alert me to any spikes." As they worked feverishly to stabilize the core, the ground continued to shake. Sweat beaded on Craig's forehead as he input a series of commands, his mind racing to process the intricate progenitor algorithms. Suddenly, the pillar of light flared, and a shockwave of energy pulsed through the room. Craig stumbled back, shielding his eyes. "Energy levels are dropping," Lursa shouted over the din. "Whatever you did, it's working." As the tremor subsided, Craig let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The crisis had been averted, but he knew their work was just the beginning. In the days that followed, New Conus buzzed with activity. The integration of progenitor technology had opened up new possibilities, and the colony was expanding at an unprecedented rate. Craig found himself overseeing the construction of additional biodomes and living quarters. The influx of visitors and new technologies strained the colony's infrastructure, necessitating rapid adaptation. As he inspected a newly completed residential sector, Craig's communicator chirped. "Ambassador, we have a situation at the spaceport." Zoe's voice came through. "A group of human scientists has just arrived, led by a Dr. Eliza Taylor. She's requesting to speak with you immediately." Craig made his way to the spaceport, where he found a team of human scientists unloading equipment from a sleek transport ship. A woman with sharp features and piercing blue eyes approached him, extending her hand. "Ambassador Craig, I'm Dr. Eliza Taylor, xenobiologist," she introduced herself. "I've come to study the effects of your partial genetic modification and its potential applications for human colonization in hostile environments." Craig raised an eyebrow. "That's quite a specific area of study, Doctor. What exactly did you have in mind?" Dr. Taylor's eyes gleamed with enthusiasm. "We'd like to run a series of medical examinations and tests. Your unique physiology could hold the key to advancing human adaptation to alien worlds." After careful consideration, Craig agreed to participate in the study. Over the next few weeks, he underwent a battery of tests, providing valuable data on the long-term effects of progenitor technology on human physiology. Meanwhile, Zoe immersed herself in the integration of progenitor defensive systems into the colony's security grid. As she worked, she discovered previously unknown capabilities of the ancient technology. "Craig, you need to see this." Zoe called him to the control center one evening. She activated a holographic display, showing a shimmering field enveloping the planet. "It's a planetary-scale cloaking device. We could potentially render the entire planet invisible to long-range sensors." The implications were staggering. Craig nodded slowly, his mind already considering the strategic advantages such a system could provide. "Begin testing immediately, but keep it under wraps for now. We need to understand its full capabilities before making any decisions." As Zoe dove into her work on the cloaking device, Lursa focused on diplomatic efforts. She negotiated complex trade agreements with various species interested in accessing progenitor technology, establishing New Quinoas as a hub of interspecies cooperation while safeguarding its most advanced capabilities. Amidst the flurry of activity, Craig implemented a new educational program that combined elements from all resident species. The New Quinoas Academy quickly took shape, becoming a symbol of the colony's commitment to diversity and innovation. As the colony expanded and evolved, Craig turned his attention to the next major challenge, exploring a newly discovered progenitor installation at the edge of the solar system. He oversaw the modification of a Klingon bird of prey, integrating progenitor technology to enhance its capabilities for deep space exploration. The upgrades were nearly complete when an urgent message came through from the long-range sensor array. Craig rushed to the control room, where he found Zoe and Lursa already poring over the data. "We've detected a massive energy surge from the progenitor installation," Zoe reported, her voice tense. "And now there's some kind of spatial anomaly forming near its location." The holographic display showed a swirling vortex of energy, slowly expanding outward. Craig's eyes widened as he realized the potential threat. "If that anomaly continues to grow, it could engulf nearby planets," Lursa said, voicing what they were all thinking. The entire solar system could be at risk. Craig's mind raced as he assessed the situation. "We need to convene an emergency meeting. Get Zalthara and our top scientists here immediately. We're going to need everyone's expertise to handle this." As the team assembled, Craig knew they were facing their greatest challenge yet. The fate of New Quinoas and possibly the entire sector hung in the balance. With dedication in his eyes, he turned to address the gathering, ready to lead them into the unknown once more. As the team prepared to embark on their mission to the progenitor installation, Craig felt a mix of anticipation and apprehension. The modified bird of prey stood ready in the launch bay, its sleek form a testament to the fusion of Klingon and progenitor technologies. "All systems are go," Zoe reported, her fingers dancing across the control panel. "We're as prepared as we can be." Craig nodded, taking his place at the helm. "Let's hope it's enough. Lursa, Dr. Taylor, are you ready?" With affirmatives from both, Craig initiated the launch sequence. The bird of prey rose smoothly from the bay, its engines thrumming with power as it accelerated towards the edge of the solar system. As they approached the progenitor installation, the ship began to shudder violently. Craig gripped the controls tightly, his enhanced reflexes working overtime to keep them on course. "Shields at 80% and dropping," Zoe called out, her voice tense. "The gravitational forces from the anomaly are intensifying." Craig's mind focused as he executed a series of complex maneuvers, weaving through the turbulent space. The ship groaned under the strain, but held together. "There!" Lursa pointed to a docking port on the massive structure looming before them. "It's our best chance for entry." With painstaking precision, Craig guided the bird of prey into position. The docking clamps engaged with a resounding thunk, and a collective sigh of relief filled the bridge. As they entered the installation, the team was met with a sight both awe-inspiring and daunting. Vast corridors stretched in every direction, filled with machinery beyond their comprehension. Many of the systems sparked and sputtered, clear signs of the installation's deteriorating state. "We need to split up," Craig decided, assessing the situation quickly. "Zoe, take Dr. Taylor and half the progenitor technicians to find the control center. The rest of us will head for the power core." As the team separated, Craig led his group through the labyrinthine structure. The corridors seemed to shift and change, making navigation a challenge. Suddenly, a high-pitched whine filled the air. "Look out!" Craig shouted, diving to the side as a beam of energy seared past him. A swarm of sleek, metallic drones emerged from hidden compartments, their weapons primed. Drawing on his enhanced abilities, Craig moved with incredible speed and agility. He leapt over a drone, using its momentum to send it crashing into another. His team followed his lead, working in concert to disable the ancient security measures. Meanwhile, Zoe's team faced challenges of their own. As they worked their way towards the control center, they encountered a series of interconnected systems that seemed to react to their presence. "It's like the whole installation is alive," Dr. Taylor marveled, studying a pulsating console. Zoe's mind raced, drawing parallels to Klingon battle simulations she had run countless times. "We need to approach this like a living opponent," she realized. "Each action we take will provoke a response. We need to stay one step ahead." With this insight, Zoe began to coordinate their movements with strategic precision. They made progress, albeit slowly, towards their goal. In the central power core, Craig and his team finally reached their objective. A massive, swirling vortex of energy dominated the chamber, its unstable pulses sending shock waves through the structure. Dr. Taylor's voice crackled over the communicator. "Craig, we've identified critical regulation points, but accessing them—" "I see them," Craig interrupted, his eyes tracking the arcs of energy that lashed out from the core. "I'll do it." Before anyone could protest, Craig stepped into the maelstrom of energy. His body tingled as he pushed through the field, each step carefully calculated. He reached the first regulation point, his hands moving with practiced precision over the alien controls. As Craig worked, Lursa relayed information between the two teams. "Zoe's made it to the control center," she reported. "She's starting to bring systems online." Craig nodded, sweat beading on his brow as he moved to the next point. The installation shuddered violently, nearly throwing him off balance. "The anomaly's growth is accelerating," Lursa warned. "We're running out of time." Craig reached the final regulation point, his mind racing. The conventional approach wasn't working fast enough. In a split-second decision, he initiated a controlled overload of a secondary node. "Craig, what are you doing?" Zoe's alarmed voice came through the comm. "Creating an energy sink," he replied, his fingers flying over the controls. "It should buy us the time we need." For a tense moment, the energy level spiked dangerously. Then, slowly but surely, they began to stabilize. Outside, the spatial anomaly started to shrink. Their victory was short-lived, however, as the strain on the ancient structure became apparent. Large sections of the installation began to break apart. "Everyone back to the ship now," Craig ordered, already sprinting towards the exit. As they ran, he and Lursa worked feverishly to download as much data as possible from the installation systems. The team piled into the bird of prey just as the outer hull of the installation began to disintegrate. Craig took the helm, his enhanced senses pushed to their limit as he navigated through the debris field. As they cleared the danger zone, the remaining energy from the collapsing installation dispersed harmlessly into space. The immediate threat had been neutralized, but Craig knew their work was a long way to go. Setting a course back to New Konoes, Craig joined Zoe and Lursa in examining the data they had recovered. As the information scrolled across their screens, it became clear that they had only scratched the surface of the progenitor's vast network and the potential it held. Craig leaned back in his chair, his mind already turning to the challenges that lay ahead. The secrets of the progenitors were still out there, waiting to be discovered, and with each revelation, the future of interspecies relations, and perhaps the galaxy itself, hung in the balance. Balance. The secrets of the progenitors were still out there, waiting to be discovered, and with each revelation, the future of interspecies relations, and perhaps the galaxy itself, hung in the balance. As the bird of prey touched down on New Konoes, Craig and his team were met with a hero's welcome. The colony's inhabitants, a diverse mix of species, crowded around the landing pad, their cheers echoing across the spaceport. Craig stepped off the ship, his posture straight despite the exhaustion etched on his face. Governor Zaltara approached, her scaled skin glistening in the planet's twin suns. Ambassador Craig, your actions have saved countless lives. The Council requests your immediate presence to discuss the implications of your discovery. Craig nodded, exchanging glances with Zoe and Lursa. Of course, Governor. We'll be there shortly. The council chamber buzzed with tension as Craig presented the data recovered from the progenitor installation. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing a vast network of similar structures spread across the galaxy. These installations, Craig explained, gesturing to the map, represent a level of technology far beyond our current understanding. The potential benefits and risks are immeasurable. The room erupted into heated debate. Representatives from various factions argued for immediate exploration, their voices rising in excitement and ambition. Craig raised his hand, silencing the chamber. I understand the desire to push forward, but we must proceed with caution. We've seen the destructive potential of this technology. I propose we establish a dedicated research team to analyze this data before launching any new expeditions. As discussions continued, Dr. Eliza Taylor approached Craig, her face a mask of professional concern. Ambassador, I need to speak with you privately about your medical results. In a quiet corner of the chamber, Dr. Taylor shared her findings. The progenitor technology is having unexpected effects on your physiology. Your enhanced abilities are continuing to develop, but there are complications. Craig's brow furrowed as he listened to the doctor's explanation. His body was struggling to adapt to its evolving state, and his genetic structure was becoming increasingly unstable. We need to run more tests, Dr. Taylor insisted. If we don't find a way to stabilize your condition, the long-term effects could be severe. Craig agreed to undergo a series of intensive medical examinations. As he lay in the advanced scanning chamber, his mind raced with the implications of Dr. Taylor's words. The potential loss of his enhanced abilities was concerning, but the threat to his health and longevity was far more pressing. While Craig focused on his medical concerns, Zoe threw herself into upgrading New Konoes's defenses. She worked tirelessly, integrating the new technologies acquired from the progenitor installation into the colony's planetary defense grid. These shield generators are incredible, Zoe marveled, her fingers dancing across a control panel. They can adapt to almost any form of energy weapon. And these new phasers? They could cut through a board cube like butter. Lursa, meanwhile, found herself in a whirlwind of diplomatic activity. She moved from one meeting to another, negotiating agreements with visiting delegations from a dozen different species. The Vulcans have agreed to send a team of their top scientists, Lursa reported during a brief respite. And the Andorians are offering military support in exchange for access to our research data. As the colony hummed with activity, Craig's condition took a turn for the worse. His enhanced abilities became erratic, spiking to dangerous levels before failing entirely. During a crucial meeting with the Leadership Council, Craig suddenly collapsed, his body convulsing uncontrollably. "Get him to the medical facility now," Dr. Taylor shouted, her voice cutting through the panic that filled the room. In the state-of-the-art medical bay, Dr. Taylor and her team worked frantically to stabilize Craig's condition. Screens displayed his rapidly deteriorating genetic structure, a cascade of failures threatening to overwhelm his system. "We're out of options," Dr. Taylor announced, her face grim. "We need to use a modified version of the progenitor regeneration technology. It's risky, but it's our only chance to save him." Zoe and Lursa stood by Craig's bedside, their faces etched with concern. "Do it," Zoe said, her voice barely above a whisper. Lursa nodded in agreement, her hand resting on Craig's arm. The medical team sprang into action, preparing a specially designed stasis chamber. Energy matrices pulsed within, infused with the essence of progenitor technology. As they carefully transferred Craig into the chamber, alarms began blaring throughout the colony. Unidentified ships entering the system. A voice announced over the colony-wide comm system. All defense personnel report to your stations immediately. Zoe's head snapped up, torn between her concern for Craig and her duty to the colony. Go, Dr. Taylor urged. We'll take care of him. The colony needs you now. With a last look at Craig's unconscious form, Zoe rushed to the Defense Command Center. Lursa followed close behind, her mind already formulating diplomatic strategies. As they reached the command center, a massive holographic display showed a fleet of sleek, alien ships approaching New Kones. Their design was unlike anything they had encountered before, neither Klingon, Federation, nor Romulan in origin. Raise shields and arm all weapons, Zoe ordered, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. But do not fire unless fired upon. Lursa, open all diplomatic channels. Let's try to talk to them first. As the colony braced for potential conflict, Craig floated in the stasis chamber, his genetic code being rewritten at an unprecedented rate. The future of New Kones, and perhaps the entire quadrant, hung in the balance as the mysterious fleet drew ever closer. As Craig floated in the stasis chamber, his genetic code undergoing rapid rewriting, the colony's alarms continued to blare. Zoe and Lursa exchanged a final worried glance at their unconscious friend before racing to the Defense Command Center. The holographic display dominated the room, showing the fleet of sleek, alien ships approaching New Kones. Zoe's fingers flew over the control panels, activating the newly upgraded planetary defense grid. Shield generators hummed to life, creating a shimmering barrier around the colony. All weapon systems online and ready, reported a technician. Lursa stepped up to the communications array. Open all diplomatic channels, she ordered. Let's see if we can avoid a conflict. Moments later, a transmission came through. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a humanoid figure with bioluminescent skin. Greetings, inhabitants of New Kones, the alien said, its voice melodious yet urgent. I am Ambassador Zelna the Zarkon. We come seeking refuge from a catastrophe that threatens our home system. Lursa stepped forward, her diplomatic training kicking in. I am Lursa, representing the New Kones colony. We're willing to hear your plea, but we must insist on strict security protocols for any landing party. After a brief negotiation, a small delegation of Zarkon was cleared to land. Zoe oversaw the security arrangements, positioning armed guards discreetly around the landing pad. As the Zarkon shuttle touched down, Lursa and Zoe watched in fascination as the aliens emerged. Their skin pulsed with soft, bioluminescent patterns, and their movements were fluid and graceful. Ambassador Zelna approached, bowing slightly. We thank you for your willingness to meet with us. Our situation is dire. A supernova in our home system threatens to wipe out our entire civilization. We seek asylum and a chance to start anew. Lursa nodded, her expression empathetic but cautious. We understand the gravity of your situation, Ambassador. Let's continue this discussion in our council chambers. As they made their way to the meeting, Dr. Taylor's voice came over Zoe's communicator. Craig's procedure is complete. You need to see this. Torn between duty and concern for their friend, Zoe and Lursa decided to split up. Lursa would continue the negotiations with the Zarkon, while Zoe rushed to the medical facility. In the state-of-the-art medical bay, Zoe found Dr. Taylor standing over Craig's bed, her expression a mix of awe and concern. Craig was awake, sitting up, but he looked different. His skin had a faint luminescence, reminiscent of the Zarkon. His eyes seemed to glow with an inner light, and his muscles appeared more defined. The treatment was successful in stabilizing his condition, Dr. Taylor explained, but there were unexpected results. Craig flexed his hand, watching as a soft glow pulsed beneath his skin. I feel incredible, he said, his voice stronger and more resonant than before. It's like I can sense everything around me with perfect clarity. Zoe quickly briefed Craig on the Zarkon situation. Despite Dr. Taylor's protests, Craig insisted on joining the negotiations. My unique perspective might be valuable, he argued. As they entered the council chambers, all eyes turned to Craig. The Zarkon delegation seemed particularly intrigued by his appearance. Ambassador Zelna's eyes widened. Fascinating. You appear to share some physiological traits with our species. Craig nodded, taking a seat next to Lursa. A recent medical procedure had some unexpected side effects. But that's a story for another time. Right now, let's focus on your situation and how we might be able to help. The negotiations continued late into the night. Craig's unique status as a human-turned-hybrid proved invaluable in bridging the cultural gap between the colonists and the refugees. He proposed a plan to integrate the Zarkon into New Konoha society, leveraging their biotechnology expertise to expand the colony's capabilities. As dawn broke, a tentative agreement was reached. The Zarkon would be granted asylum, with a phased integration plan to be implemented over the coming months. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Craig, Zoe, and Lursa found themselves at the center of a rapidly changing society. Town halls and information sessions were organized to keep the colonists informed and involved in the decision-making process. Craig spent much of his time with Ambassador Zelna, learning about Zarkon culture and physiology. The ambassador, fascinated by Craig's unique hybrid state, offered to share their bioengineering techniques to help stabilize and enhance his new abilities. Our techniques could help you unlock the full potential of your new physiology, Zelna explained, leading Craig through a Zarkon biolab. With your permission, we could begin a series of treatments immediately. Craig hesitated only briefly before agreeing. The treatments were intense, but the results were remarkable. His hybrid physiology strengthened, and he gained new sensory abilities, including the capacity to perceive a broader spectrum of electromagnetic radiation. Meanwhile, Zoe threw herself into integrating Zarkon biotechnology with the colony's defense systems. Working alongside Zarkon engineers, she developed organic components for the planetary defense grid, significantly enhancing its adaptability and regenerative capabilities. Lursa found herself navigating an increasingly complex political landscape. The success of the Zarkon integration and the advancements in hybrid technology were attracting attention from across the quadrant. Ships from various species, including the Federation and Klingon Empire, began arriving to observe and potentially negotiate for access to New Konoha's innovations. As the colony expanded to accommodate the influx of visitors and new residents, Craig initiated an ambitious construction project for new habitation domes and research facilities. The skyline of New Konoha was changing rapidly, a visual representation of the colony's evolution. One evening, as Craig, Zoe, and Lursa gathered to discuss the day's events, an urgent message came through from the long-range sensor array. Unusual energy readings had been detected in a nearby star system, bearing a striking resemblance to the progenitor installation they had encountered before. The trio exchanged looks of excitement and apprehension. The discovery of another, potentially larger and more complex progenitor installation could change everything. As they prepared to convene an emergency meeting of the colony's leadership council, they knew that the decision they were about to face would have far-reaching consequences, not just for New Konoha, but for the entire quadrant. The implications of this discovery sent ripples of excitement and apprehension through the colony's leadership. As the emergency meeting convened, Craig, Zoe, and Lursa found themselves at the center of a heated debate. The council chamber buzzed with voices, each member eager to voice their opinion on the potential risks and rewards of exploring another progenitor installation. "We can't ignore this opportunity," Craig argued, his voice carrying a new resonance that commanded attention. "The advancements we've already made with progenitor technology have transformed our colony. Imagine what we could learn from a larger, more complex installation." Zoe nodded in agreement, her eyes gleaming with the prospect of new technological marvels. "Our defense systems have improved exponentially. This could be the key to securing our future in this quadrant. However, not everyone shared their enthusiasm. A group of conservative Klingon colonists voiced their concerns, their voices rising above the general murmur. "We've already strayed too far from our roots," one of them growled. "How much more will we change before we lose ourselves entirely?" Lursa stepped forward, her diplomatic skills put to the test. "Change is inevitable," she said, her voice firm but understanding. "But we can guide that change. This is an opportunity to shape our destiny, not be consumed by it." As the debate raged on, Craig made a decision. He stood up, his newly enhanced physiology drawing all eyes to him. "I propose we organize an expedition team," he announced. "We'll select experts from all our communities: humans, Klingon, Zareth, and Zarkon. I'll lead the mission personally." His words sent a hush through the chamber, followed by a burst of excited chatter. Zoe immediately began outlining plans for modifying a Klingon bird of prey with progenitor and Zarkon technologies. Lursa set to work coordinating with various factions to secure political support for the mission. In the days that followed, New Kues became a hive of activity. The selected bird of prey was moved to a specially prepared hangar, where teams of engineers worked around the clock to integrate the advanced systems. Craig spent hours in the medical bay with Dr. Taylor, undergoing rigorous tests to ensure his hybrid physiology would remain stable during the journey. As he lay on the examination table, Dr. Taylor's face appeared above him, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Your cellular structure continues to evolve," she muttered, studying a holographic display of Craig's DNA. "It's fascinating, really. Your body seems to be constantly adapting, becoming more efficient." Craig flexed his hand, watching the now familiar glow pulse beneath his skin. "Will it be a problem for the mission?" Dr. Taylor shook her head. "On the contrary, your enhanced physiology should give you an edge out there. Just be careful, Craig. We're in uncharted territory here." As launch day approached, tension in the colony reached a fever pitch. A group of conservative Klingon gathered outside the main administration building, their angry voices carrying across the plaza. Craig stood before them, his enhanced senses picking up every muttered curse and worried whisper. He raised his hands, calling for silence. "I understand your fears," he began, his voice carrying easily over the crowd. "Change can be frightening, but look at what we've accomplished here." With a thought, Craig activated his bioluminescence, his skin glowing with an otherworldly light. He levitated several feet off the ground, demonstrating his enhanced abilities. "This is not the end of who we are," he continued. "It's an evolution, a step forward into a future where we are stronger, more adaptable, more capable of facing whatever challenges the universe throws at us." His display and words had a visible effect on the crowd. The angry shouts died down, replaced by murmurs of awe and cautious hope. As the sun rose on launch day, the modified bird prey stood ready on the launch pad, its sleek lines betraying hints of its hybrid nature. Craig stood at the base of the ramp, saying his goodbyes to Zoe and Lursa. "Take care of things here," he said, embracing each of them in turn. "We'll be back before you know it." Zoe nodded, her eyes shining with a mix of pride and worry. "Just make sure you bring that ship back in one piece. I've put a lot of work into those upgrades." Lursa gripped Craig's arm in a warrior's farewell. "Remember, you carry the hopes of New Kues with you. Make us proud." With a final nod to his friends, Craig boarded the ship. The rest of the expedition team was already at their stations. A diverse group of experts, their faces a mix of drive and excitement. As the ship lifted off, its enhanced engines humming with power, Craig felt a surge of anticipation. They were embarking on a journey that could change everything, for New Kues, for the quadrant, perhaps for the entire galaxy. The bird of prey cleared the atmosphere, the stars spreading out before them in an endless tapestry of possibility. Craig input the coordinates for the newly discovered progenitor installation, his enhanced senses allowing him to navigate the complexities of the ship's hybrid systems with ease. As they engaged the warp drive, Craig addressed his crew. "We're heading into the unknown," he said, his voice steady and confident. "But whatever we find out there, we face it together. For New Konoes and for the future." The ship streaked into warp, leaving the familiar confines of their colony behind. Ahead lay mystery, danger, and the promise of discovery. The next chapter in the saga of New Konoes was about to unfold. Begin. The initial excitement of their journey quickly gave way to a sense of urgency as reports began flooding in from across the quadrant. Progenitor installations were activating at an alarming rate, presenting a potential threat to countless inhabited worlds, including New Konoes. Craig's enhanced senses tingled with an overwhelming influx of data as he processed the incoming transmissions. He turned to his crew, his expression grave. "We need to change course. The situation has escalated beyond our initial mission parameters." He opened a secure channel to New Konoes, where Zoe and Lursa appeared on the display, their faces etched with concern. "We've received the reports," Zoe said, her fingers dancing over a control panel. "The colony's defenses are holding, but we're detecting increased activity in nearby sectors." Lursa nodded, her warrior's instincts evident in her stance. "We cannot sit idle while this threat grows." "What do you propose, Craig?" Craig's mind raced, processing possibilities at superhuman speed. "We need to find the source, the central hub controlling these installations. It's our only chance to deactivate the network and protect not just New Konoes, but countless other worlds." The trio spent the next several days poring over the data they had collected, combining their unique perspectives and expertise. Craig's hybrid physiology allowed him to interface directly with the ship's computer, processing vast amounts of information. Zoe's engineering brilliance helped decode complex energy signatures, while Lursa's tactical mind identified patterns in the activations. Finally, after countless hours of work, they had their answer. Craig's eyes glowed with an inner light as he announced, "We've found it. The central progenitor hub. It's in an uncharted sector, far beyond known space." Without hesitation, Craig set a course for the distant coordinates. The modified bird of prey streaked through space, its enhanced engines pushing the limits of what was thought possible. As they ventured deeper into unknown territory, the challenges mounted. Automated progenitor ships appeared seemingly out of nowhere, their ancient defenses still operational after millennia of dormancy. Craig's enhanced reflexes and newfound connection to the ship proved invaluable as he executed maneuvers that defied conventional physics, evading energy beams and guided projectiles with preternatural skill. Zoe worked tirelessly at her station, her fingers flying over the controls as she fine-tuned their defenses. The hybrid shield system she had developed, a masterful integration of Klingon, Zarkon, and progenitor technologies, adapted in real time to each new threat they encountered. As they pushed deeper into uncharted space, the very fabric of reality seemed to warp around them. Gravitational anomalies twisted space-time, creating treacherous conditions that would have torn a normal ship apart. Craig's enhanced senses allowed him to perceive these distortions, guiding the ship through the cosmic maelstrom with uncanny precision. After what felt like an eternity of battling both machine and nature, they arrived at the coordinates. Before them loomed a structure of impossible scale, a Dyson sphere encompassing an entire star system. "By Kalis," Lursa breathed, her eyes wide with awe. "The power required to construct such a thing." Craig nodded, equally amazed. "And it's been here, hidden all this time. The hub must be inside." As they approached the sphere, its defenses activated, a barrier of energy forming to repel intruders. Craig closed his eyes, reaching out with his hybrid senses to interface with the ancient systems. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a surge of power that sent tingles through his entire body, Craig felt himself connect to the sphere's control systems. A seam appeared in the energy barrier, just large enough for their ship to pass through. Craig guided the bird of prey into the opening, revealing a vast interior space larger than anything they had ever encountered. At the heart of the sphere, they found a city-sized complex filled with technology so advanced it bordered on the miraculous. As they sat down on a landing platform, Craig felt a pull, an inexplicable urge to explore deeper into the hub. Leading the away team, Craig navigated through corridors of shimmering energy and rooms filled with holographic displays beyond their comprehension. In the central chamber, a pedestal stood, covered in intricate symbols that seemed to shift and change as they watched. Drawn by an instinct he couldn't explain, Craig reached out and touched the pedestal. In an instant, the room came alive with light, and a holographic figure materialized before them. A being of pure energy, its form constantly shifting and evolving. The figure spoke, its voice resonating not just in their ears, but in their very minds. "Welcome, Hybrid One. We have awaited an intermediary, such as you for eons." Craig realized with a start that he was facing the collective consciousness of the long-extinct progenitors, the creators of the vast network that now threatened the galaxy. As the hologram began to share its knowledge, Craig's hybrid mind expanded, absorbing information at an incredible rate. In that moment of clarity, he understood the true purpose of the progenitor network, not to conquer or destroy, but to guide and protect developing civilizations across the galaxy. The recent activations were a response to perceived threats, a safeguard gone awry after millennia without oversight. With this newfound understanding, Craig knew what he had to do. Working in concert with the progenitor consciousness, he began the process of reprogramming the network. It was a delicate operation, requiring all of his hybrid abilities and the combined expertise of his team. Hours passed as Craig worked, sweat beading on his brow as he navigated the complexities of the ancient systems. Finally, with a surge of energy that momentarily dimmed the lights throughout the complex, it was done. The network entered a dormant state, its installations no longer a threat, but still accessible for their knowledge and technology. As the team prepared to leave, the holographic progenitor spoke once more. "Hybrid One, we offer you a choice. Within this hub lies the technology to restore your original human form, should you desire it." Craig paused, his mind racing with the implications. He looked at his hands, the faint glow beneath his skin a constant reminder of his transformation. Then he turned to his crew, to the friends and allies who had stood by him through every challenge. With a smile, he shook his head. "Thank you, but no. This is who I am now, a bridge between worlds, just like New Kilnoes itself. I choose to remain as I am." As they boarded their ship and set a course for home, Craig knew that their journey was far from finished. They had neutralized the immediate threat, but the discovery of the progenitor hub had opened up new possibilities and new responsibilities for New Kilnoes and the entire galaxy. The bird of prey streaked through space, carrying with it the promise of a new era. An era of cooperation, of technological marvels, and of a future where the boundaries between species blurred in the pursuit of a greater good. As Craig gazed out at the stars rushing past, he couldn't help but smile. Their adventure, it seemed, was only just beginning.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.